Phoenix? Oh, hi.
There are kind of a lot of reasons that I wanted to go to Phoenix.
Something that interested me
is the smaller community.
I thought that the mastery grading system would be cool.
I thought that it sounded pretty cool, but I didn't want to leave all my friends.
I really liked it, and I made a lot of new friends. So I can experience like a more close-knit community where you know everyone around you.
My brother coming home every day, thinking that it's very fun all through elementary school.
the fact that we would be able to work at our own pace.
Phoenix just sounded like a good fresh start, you know, a new try.
We also have short days on Friday.
We end early on Fridays.
So I decided that I'd try it out, see how it was.
The global awareness pillar is looking at ways that affect the world or different cultures around the world.
We have a bunch of flags on the wall in the family room, and we actively change them out every semester so that the flags from kids' countries that are attending Phoenix currently can see their flag up there.
Connections class at Phoenix helps build character.
Your character is pretty much positive here because you can grow.
The Connections class here at Phoenix is a class where we talk about arguments, but we also talk about other things that have happened around the world.
I think that Phoenix does a really good job of encouraging people to bring out their creative side. Discovery days are also a big thing to encourage your creative expression.
You could write a song, do a poem, make a woodwork thing, do something out of cardboard.
One of my students did a sitar lesson last Discovery Day.
One of my Discovery days, I spent drawing a roadmap of the city of Columbus.
The intellectual discipline pillar.
Teachers help you understand stuff, but they don't give the answer to you because that wouldn't really be learning.
I think it's great to give kids chances to redo work and then let them show that they understand it in their own unique way.
You can't just get a 0 if you don't turn something in. In Mastery, you have to continue doing it until you get it right.
The Phoenix Pillar Wellness, we get options to choose for gym, how we can go outside for lunch. We also have clubs after school.
The club that I am in is called the News Club.
We have a video game sports team, esports team, that we started this year, and they won the state championship.
So it's also wellness for your mind. At the end of the day, we have a special class called Extensions where we're able to go to any teacher that we need to for help.
One of our teachers here, Mr. Smith, is our wellness teacher and has a lot of character. He helps people with math, and he also has good relationships with a lot of the students here.
At Phoenix, we have such a good connection between the students and the teachers.
All the teachers here are great.
The teachers in Phoenix help you learn. If you don't understand something, they will explain it in a different way that you understand.
I'm glad that I came to Phoenix.
It's very laid back.
It's got a lot of stuff that just makes it awesome. There's a lot of openness.
Phoenix is a very positive experience.
I just think that it's an awesome way to run a school. And I'm very happy that I went. It was probably the best decision I've ever made.
My favorite parts of Worthington schools. We have a lot of options.
IED being the first class you take freshman year, one of my favorite classes at Thomas so far.
We made a lamp, I think out of metal tubing.
It's really hands-on, it's really fun.
I still have it on my desk at home. It is a staple of my desk. My favorite was probably the egg car project.
It was so fun and so engaging, and there was not a day that I didn't want to go to that class.
That first engineering class we take, IED, is super hands-on and fun and really kind of draws you in.
Working with power tools gives you confidence.
I can go home and I can use those tools.
You're able to make something with a bandsaw.
The other day we were taking apart a deck in our backyard and I was able to help with that.
I just gained so much confidence. The biggest thing about STEM is just the family. Middle schoolers go from a school of 500 kids to going to a school with 1,800 kids. It's a big difference. It's a smaller community and it's a smaller environment than the general population. Like a fish in a very big pond.
You have the same people in every class, so you really develop pretty deep relationships with not only the teachers, but the students as well.
It was almost a built-in group of friends because you would see them at school and then you would see them outside of school and you would already have that relationship built, and it just made it so much easier.
Walking into a high school that was larger than any high school that I had attended or that I had walked into before. It was intimidating to me as a parent. We sat in the cafeteria where the 4 STEM teachers did a presentation, and they were a unified front.
All the teachers for the STEM program are just phenomenal.
They're really kind.
It's a great team of teachers.
They check up on you. They make sure that you're doing your best.
I learned so much last year and this year with those teachers.
Mr. Brown and Miss Stanich and Miss Hertenstein, Miss Court and Miss Laughlin.
Those are like your people.
They're always there for you.
I absolutely was a huge fan of them as educators and, frankly, of them as fellow parents.
I didn't feel like I had to sacrifice anything I wanted to take.
I think I got more from STEM.
You're older, you're actually able to take more APs.
I was able to get more in my schedule because I was done with science.
You have more room in your schedule, you're able to get into that more and actually get more than your peers.
My counselor made it work, and I ended up doing 4 years of EBA and 4 years of STEM, and I definitely wouldn't have it any other way.
I was able to go into an internship with Abbott. It makes me so thankful that I was in STEM.
I honestly feel that anyone could walk into this program and do well just because
I genuinely think anyone could.
the teachers all have your best interests in mind.
They want to help people who are also passionate about STEM.
Want to be an engineer if you don't want to be an engineer, if you just like to make stuff, if you just want to learn in a little bit of a different environment, if you want that family aspect.
There's no negative to trying it.
As long as you want to learn, you can learn.
They will work with you.
You don't have to worry about like failure because they will not let you fail.
Okay, it's 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Best.
Present.
Mrs. Davis.
Present.
Mrs. Hudson.
Present.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Present.
Mr. Wilson.
Here. At this time, I'd like to introduce the folks sitting up here at the table. To your far right over here is Board Member Kelly Davis. Next to her is Board Member Jennifer Best. Next to me here is our treasurer, TJ Cusick. And next to me on your left, on my right, is Superintendent Dr. Trent Bowers. Next to him is Vice President Nikki Hudson. And next to her is Board Member Amy Lloyd. Okay, at this time, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as it was posted on our website on Thursday and was distributed to the board members on Thursday.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we've had a motion second to approve the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes or amendments. Does anyone have any? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Best.
Oh, yeah, we got the amendment second, sorry.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes. Okay, at this time, we will have public participation, visitor comments. The school board and the administrative staff certainly encourage and greatly appreciate community interest in meetings of the Board of Education. This section of the agenda is designed to hear the views of community members about their schools and about items on the agenda. I shall ask each speaker to address the board at the visitors podium here on your right, so that the speaker's remarks may be clearly heard by those of us in the room. The speaker should also give his or her name and street address and limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Consistent with our policy 9130 on public complaints, we urge you with respect to complaints about particular employees that those be referred to the superintendent and please not be addressed during the public session. We remind all speakers that our district values and respects all people as they are, and that our district is committed to creating and maintaining safe spaces for all our students and community members. We want also to remind our community that we value public input and always appreciate when our community members remember our district's values, refraining from using harmful or offensive language, and for sharing your comments in a civil and respectful manner. It is not the practice of this board or any board that I'm aware of to respond to remarks during the visitor comment section of our meeting. Our first speaker is Administrative team will provide us with an update of the district special education programs.
Good evening. I'd like to just say a few things as our special ed team makes their way to the lectern. I just wanted to note to all of you how proud we are to work alongside of our special education team. I know they worked very hard on tonight's presentation, so to our board, thank you for some of your questions ahead of time. Hopefully those will be addressed throughout the presentation. The diagram that you see in front of you, I just wanted to note this, and I know you know this as a special or as a Board of Education, but to our public, our special education team is a part of the academic achievement and professional learning team. You can see lots of titles around that circle, but our elementary director, gifted education, secondary director, instructional coaches, all a part of our academic achievement and professional learning team. As I refer to AAPL, I realize not everybody knows what that means. So academic achievement, professional learning team. And we're happy that they're a part of that team because they certainly are an integral part of the decisions that we make in academic achievement and professional learning. So looks like Kim is ready. And so our Director of Special Education, Kim, will begin tonight's program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angie. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and we really appreciate the opportunity to work in such a comprehensive program that Angie just referred to in the Academic Achievement and Professional Development Department. It really allows us opportunities for collaboration amongst all of those stakeholders to do what's best for our teachers, our community, and our students. So good evening. Dr. Bowers and Board of Education. My name is Kim Marani, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Special Education. Here with me tonight, what am I doing wrong, Jeff? There we go. Okay. We're going to provide you an overview of the supports and services of our special ed program. And here with me tonight is our administrative team that you'll see up here. In addition to myself on the administrative team for Worthington Schools, I have a great, wonderful group of people. We have 3 coordinators, Beth Rayna Williams, Renee Brenson, and Jake Guthrie. You'll hear from them a little bit more in a little bit in reference to the work that they do for the students across the district. And then Patricia Wendland is here as our Sutter Park preschool principal. Also with us tonight, not a part of the admin team, but a very important part of our group is Colleen Cintron Ravelli. She's our parent mentor. So she is also going to share with you tonight the work that she does with us. So as the director, I have the responsibility of what I would call oversight. It's that 30,000-foot balcony view of the district special ed program. That includes everything from the education of our students, the accountability to our community, the accountability to you, our board, to our families, our staff, as well as the Ohio Department of Education, and making sure that we're meeting all of the requirements as them. What you're going to see on this first slide for me are some of the highlights of my day-to-day responsibilities. So the first bullet I have there is the AAPO department initiatives. That embeds in the work that that department does and the collaboration that you saw on that first slide, our involvement, and it's not just me, all of our coordinators and admin team and our support staff participate in that process and that program and that collaboration as well. But that really brings the special ed lens to all of that planning in terms of the professional development across the district and the work and initiatives that the AAPL department provide. I also have responsibility and oversight to a variety of reports that are due to the Department of Education, state reports that we have to gather data. We have a variety of means of gathering that data and getting the input into the system, so that falls under my roles and responsibilities as well. You'll see procedures and policies. So basically, every public school district is responsible for providing FAPE under the IDEA. So that is the role that I have in terms of oversight of those policies and procedures for special education, making sure that we're meeting all of the guidelines that are set for special ed services in a public school setting. Staffing falls under basically my responsibility, along with working with human resources, obviously, but we continuously monitor throughout the school year caseload numbers across the districts and responses to student needs. We work annually on projections of students that we know are coming to us, students that we currently have, students that we know are leaving us. We monitor students that move in, students that move out, so that we can make sure that we're providing appropriate staffing for the students and to make sure that they're able to access their education. I also assist the HR team in going to job fairs at some of the local colleges to do screenings and hiring. And then each year, for the special ed staffing piece, we'll look at programming across the district and take into consideration if we have to make adjustments in terms of adding programming, moving programming, adjusting programming. So all of that is a part of the staffing. I certainly don't oversee that alone. Like I said, I work with Angie, Jeff, Trent, obviously, as we do and look at the oversight of the required staff to support our students. Section 504 falls under the oversight of special education. So Section 504 is a regular education initiative. It's not really considered special education, but we oversee that program in our department. So all of the buildings have someone that's responsible, or sometimes a couple of people that are responsible for making sure that those plans are updated. We monitor those in our office. So those administrative assistants in our office will run monthly reports so we can make sure that plans are being updated as they need to be, and that evaluations are also completed for 504 every 3 years. Sometimes those will look differently than a special ed evaluation. They're just a paper review, depending on the services for those students, but we do monitor the oversight of those. I am also available to attend 504 meetings with building principals or school counselors, school psychologists as they're doing those evaluation pieces, and then also with families if they have questions or concerns, then they'll work through our department as well. Legal counsel liaison, that is something if there's any situation across the district where we end up needing support from legal counsel, that typically would then fall under my scope. So I would become involved in that situation or that case just to help streamline the information and give one person for those teams to work with. Some other things that aren't listed up there, and you'll hear a little bit later about a special ed key communicator group. Colleen's going to share more information, something that we started last year. Also, in terms of teacher support, you'll hear from the coordinators that they're out in the buildings a lot, like every week, scheduled meetings with the intervention specialist. I don't have the ability to get to all buildings on a monthly basis like that. So I have structured grade level Zoom meetings with all of the intervention specialists. So if there's anything that comes up for the good of all of them, that they have access to me and the coordinators also. So we meet within those large subgroups 4 times a year. So that we also do. And then basically anything else that's asked of me, whether it's Angie asking or Trent asking or these wonderful staff members behind me, we often have really full schedules. So there will be times we'll get double booked or triple booked. And so we really work together to try to make sure that we cover everything that needs covered across the district. All right, next up on the screen, you're going to see each of our coordinators and then the responsibilities and assignments that they cover throughout the district. I think you've probably all seen this before. I know we've presented on this piece as well. So what we're going to do now is each of them are going to come up and they're going to share what their roles and responsibilities are. As they share that, as special ed coordinators, they provide a lot of the same supports and work across the district. So they're going to each share a little bit about what they all do. Okay, so we're going to start. First up will be Beth Rena Williams.
Good evening. I am Beth Rena Williams, and I've had the opportunity to serve as a coordinator of special education services here in Worthington Schools for the past 7 years. Currently, as Kim mentioned, I support the elementary and middle schools that are in the Worthington-Kilbourne High School feeder pattern. And then I also supervise our school psychologist and physical therapists. So tonight we did want to share with you some of our roles and responsibilities and how we support the buildings that we each serve in. Our intervention specialists, we have regularly scheduled monthly and quarterly meetings that we meet with those folks. Typically, building administrator will also participate in that meeting with us, so it is an opportunity for us to kind of talk about caseloads or any questions or concerns that they might have. In addition, if there's any updates from ODE, it's a good time for us to be able to share that information as well. And then, of course, we are always available on an as-need basis, so we'll meet individually with intervention specialists if they need to take a phone call, emails, or just problem solve a situation with them. ETR and IEP meetings, that's kind of the crux of our work. Unfortunately, we are not able to attend every single ETR and IEP meeting in the district. We do attend all initial IEP meetings with new intervention specialists as they come into Worthington. And then, of course, we will attend any meeting that we are requested to by a parent, by a building administrator, or staff members. If they ask us to come to those meetings, we always make ourselves available to do so. District programming, we have district programming across our district, and we serve the district programs in each of the buildings that we're assigned to. So as coordinators, kind of the way that we support that programming is that we help to facilitate the process if a student is needing to access a district program or if they are transitioning out of a district programs. And those programs are really designed, we have different programs in the district that are really designed just to support students who may need additional or more specialized supports in their school day. In addition to that, we will take families on visits to those programs so that they can, if they're considering a district program, it's kind of an opportunity for them to see what the district programming looks like in comparison to maybe supports that their child's currently receiving. We also collaborate with several out-of-district programs for students who may just need a more therapeutic setting to access their educational environment. We take families to visit those programs and then work really closely with the program and the family if a placement is agreed upon, because it's important to us that that student have a very smooth transition into those placements. And then as coordinators, we attend all of those ETR and IEP meetings for those students and stay in constant communication with those programs. Our ultimate goal is always to educate our students here in Worthington schools. So anytime those students are ready to transition back, we want to make sure that we're providing them the opportunity to do so. And then I am sure you are all aware and have heard Steve Griffin speak to the multi-tiered system of supports, or otherwise known as our MTSS process that was initiated this year across all of our elementary buildings with a heavy focus on reading. Renee and I have had the opportunity this year to partner with both Steve and those building MTSS teams and actively participate in those meetings. And this has really allowed us an opportunity to support the school teams as they analyze that data and discuss struggling learners and the level of need of support that they might have, meaning that, we're able to really have a good conversation around, does a student, do we just need to continue the intervention that's in place? Do we need to tweak the intervention? Or is it time to really start looking at holding a stakeholders meeting and possibly discussing, moving towards an evaluation and looking at some more specially designed instruction for that student under special education. So it's been, we've really appreciated the opportunity, and I feel like that we've been able to get a better handle too on the number of evaluations that we have coming from those meetings and helping us to better predict the supports and services that we'll need for the upcoming school year.
Hello, I'm Renee Brinson, and I've been in the school district for 10 years, and 8 of those years I've been able to serve as one of the special education coordinators. So some of our other responsibilities that we have are to work with our related service groups. So each of us as coordinators support at least one of the related service groups. Jake provides support to the occupational therapist. Beth supports the school psychologist and the physical therapist. And I support the speech and language pathologist and our adaptive physical education teacher. part of that support is collaborating with them on their building assignments each year, monitoring their caseloads. We complete their evaluations. We work with each group at least quarterly, some groups monthly. And we also work with human resources as if someone goes out on medical leave or has a baby, then we still have to cover all of those services for students. So we work with HR to make sure that we get those services covered while that person is out. The next thing is the scholarship meeting attendance. So we have about 116 students who are currently on either the Autism or John Peterson Scholarship. So those students get that money and that funding to go to other programs, private programs in the community. But even though they are not attending our school buildings, we're still responsible for monitoring and completing their paperwork, their special education paperwork. So we complete their IEPs. We have a half-time staff person who completes all of those IEPs for us. But Jake and Beth and I participate in those IEP meetings. So that's quite a few extra meetings, and over the last couple of years, we've picked up some additional responsibilities. So the Learning Spectrum became chartered, and they're within our district boundaries. So we are now responsible for the evaluations, for all of the evaluations at the Learning Spectrum at that location for Worthington and non-Worthington students. In addition to that, we've also picked up additional Worthington Christian buildings because Worthington Christian moved all of their buildings into the boundaries of Worthington City Schools. And so now we also do all of the evaluations for their Worthington and non-Worthington students. New staff training is one of our other responsibilities. So all of our special education staff participate in all of the new staff activities that are provided here at the WEC and other buildings during that almost week-long training that we provide in Worthington. But in addition to what everyone else receives, we also have a day of special education training where we go through the ETR, the evaluation documents, the IEP documents. We talk to them about compliance and how to complete paperwork and who to go to if they have questions. We also let them know that we'll attend their first, few IEP meetings until they feel comfortable running those meetings. And then we make sure that they have a touch point with administration. They know who to contact if they have a question. And then we make sure that they have a mentor that is specific to their discipline so that they can also get those discipline-specific questions answered. Then we kind of move into some transition stuff. So preschool to elementary transition, Beth and I every January go to Sutter Park and we meet with every preschool intervention specialist and Tricia and the school psychologist and go through every student who is either eligible or required to transition to kindergarten. So, and then the teachers will tell us at that point in January what their recommendation is, or if they've talked to parents, whether they think the child may go to kindergarten or whether they may stay at Sutter Park, and if they have a recommendation regarding programming. So if they think that they'll be fine to go to their home school and have a building intervention specialist, or if they think that they might need something more like the support of one of our district programs. And that changes, so it's very fluid. Kids grow a lot when they're 5 years old or 4 years old, almost 5. So we just keep an eye on that and monitor that as we get closer and closer for those students to go to kindergarten. Tricia does a nice job of keeping a master spreadsheet. So we have every one of those kids broken out by building, and we have, their recommendations and whether they're going to kindergarten or whether they're going to stay. And then that helps us with projected caseload numbers. So we know how many kids are going to be going into each of those buildings, and then that helps predict staffing levels. So we know what we need in which building. The IEP team, of course, makes the final decision, and the parent is a part of that IEP team meeting, but at least we have some starting point. And then often parents, when they hear those recommendations, will want to make an informed decision, so they'll want to see, what does a kindergarten classroom look like? What does a structured communication learning center classroom look like? And so Beth and I set up those visits in those different elementary buildings, and then we take them, meet them, and so that they can see that and can make an informed decision when they're at the IEP meeting. And as much as we try to plan ahead, sometimes those things change. Parents change their mind about they're going and then now they're not going, or we have sometimes late enrollments in kindergarten. So then we just have to adjust and be pretty flexible with that. Next, I'll talk about the elementary to middle school transition. We've set up a timeline. So now we have a form with a timeline that intervention specialists can give all of our parents for those kids who are in 5th grade going into middle school, so that they can know when to expect transition activities. So we talk about when scheduling usually happens, when transition nights usually happen, so that they can be aware of that. So historically, we used to make sure that our elementary and middle school staff would meet in person to talk about those transitions, and then we had the great sub shortage, so we weren't able to do that, so we were doing it electronically and through Zoom and spreadsheets, and this year we're going to be able to meet again. I think we'll have enough coverage to be able to do that. So we'll have our elementary and our middle school staff meet together. They'll go through the IEPs. They can talk about what the students' individual needs are, what types of support they need, what type of programming and classroom help they need. And then it really helps set up the student for success. And then we have transition nights. All 4 of our middle schools have transition nights. They're happening this week and next week for 5th grade students and their parents to go. They can meet staff, see the building, ask questions. And so it's just a good opportunity in a very low-key setting to just go in and get familiarize themselves with the buildings. And then depending on the student, sometimes there are special circumstances or students who have a lot of anxiety about going to the middle school and they might need some additional time there. And we will set up additional visits, let them go in and practice. Doing the combination on their locker is always a really big thing for kids going into middle school, walk their schedule, and just become more comfortable with the building before they get there. And Jake will continue talking about transition for middle to high school.
Good evening. My name is Jake Guthrie. I'm serving as in my 2nd year as special education coordinator for the district. I previously served 11 years as an intervention specialist, primarily at the high school level. And kind of continue on the discussion with transitioning students throughout the grade levels. Since I've worked primarily at the secondary levels, I've had the opportunity to kind of help with the middle school to high school transition. We put a lot of focus on that because it's such a big leap for students going from small buildings from the elementary to middle and then middle to high school, with our high schools being such a large setting. We put a lot of emphasis on helping those families understand what to expect. I've spent a lot of time this year, if not attending meetings in person with the 8th grade families, coordinating with the staff and reviewing IEPs and communicating with families to answer questions. Anything related to that move to next year at the high school level. We do a lot of the same things that the elementary to middle school does, where there's curriculum nights and there's transition nights. We'll set up special tours this school year or even into August next year to walk through schedules and show locker locations and discuss anything related to what the students and families will be experiencing at the high school level. After students have transitioned into high school, within the high school program, we have post-secondary training throughout high school. How that's looked is we have an internship program that typically students take their freshman or sophomore year, and it's a 1-year program to develop and practice employability skills in addition to their academic classes. After taking internship for a year, they traditionally will go and take Enclave, which is a structured and supervised program with a transition coach in a community setting, where we'll work with job sites throughout the community of Worthington and have students go and work and gain valuable experience in that setting as well. It's a really cool experience for those students. A lot of times, many of those students will transition and go into job training when they're ready. We'll help them seeking, obtaining, and maintaining competitive employment while they're still in school. So they'll get a job, they'll work a job, get paid for that job, and our transition specialists will help work with the manager if they're having any troubles in the work setting, or if they're trying to find a job, help with resumes, interviewing, things like that. Finally, as we work kind of through the post-secondary training process, we partner with the Delaware Area Career Center. Many of our students will choose to go and apply to programs at that that campus. And some students will go full day, some students will go half day while still taking classes here in Worthington. And we work collaboratively with DACC to continue to just improve those students' ability to be ready for the workforce or whatever they choose to do after high school, whether that be college or full-time employment. We also help with the connection between outside resources such as OOD or Franklin County Board of DD to make sure that those families, if eligible, are already connected to those services before leaving. That way, when they transition on to adulthood, they have that support system already in place. Adding to that, there's times when we have students that finish their academic requirements but aren't quite ready to transition out of high school and graduate. So we have 12 plus programs that we work with outside of our district to help explore, develop, and refine employability skills or other skills that they would need to either join the workforce or go on to post-secondary education. And that focuses on an independent transition plan for those students. We have a few programs we work with throughout the community. One is Project Search, which works at Nationwide Hospital and Grady Hospital. Everybody Works is a program that I've visited and worked with at Ohio Dominican. It's a very cool program. It's right on campus at Ohio Dominican where they work in different places on campus. And then they also have classrooms built to be able to work on independent living skills and other skills that they might need, students might need after high school. And then also campus-based program, which is set up through the ESC of Central Ohio on Columbus State's campus and Ohio State's campus, where they are able to have job experience and work experience on those campuses. Again, just building their employability skills and life skills beyond the academics that they'd be getting in the traditional high school curriculum. Finally, with testing coordination, obviously there's a lot of assessments that students take throughout the school year. We as coordinators work with our district testing coordinator, Kathy Montag, and meet with her monthly to discuss assessments that are coming up throughout the year, talk about students that may need specific accommodations, and that's for students that are in the district and outside of the district, to ensure that they're taking the appropriate tests, they have the appropriate accommodations, and they're set up for what they need when that testing comes about. That also involves some training with staff to make sure they're able to administer and proctor those tests and are prepared to be able to help students throughout that process and families throughout that process. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're going to hear from Patricia Wayland on Sutter Park. Thank you.
Hello, I am Trisha. I am the principal of Sutter Park, but I'm also privileged to be part of the special education department. So I kind of have two roles at Sutter Park. We provide services for students who are ages 3 through 5, sometimes 6. And our services can be a range of support depending on what we feel the students need. A big part of my role is overseeing the enrollment, evaluation, and qualification of students who have disabilities, as well as those students who are transitioning from Help Me Grow. So that is an early intervention program through the county, and we start that transition process when they're itty bitties, like 2.5 years old, just to ensure that smooth process from early intervention services to school-based services. I have 18 early childhood intervention specialists that are all licensed through ODE. I have several paraprofessionals that provide supports to our students, lots of related service providers that push into the classroom and pull out to provide specialized services that Renee and Beth shared. And then a big part of my role is compliance, such special ed is, but really looking at what's called Step Up to Quality. So that is a big requirement for any preschool program that is receiving federal dollars. And it is intense. I don't recommend anybody doing it, but we really get a lot of great feedback every time they come. They come unannounced, and they just go through all of their requirements and then what we're doing to meet those requirements. Last year, she left crying because she was so excited. So it's really nice feedback in terms of what we do as a program. And then the last thing that I just wanted to share on here, it's House Bill 554, but it's also related to Senate Bill 356. and that is a new bill that recently passed, allowing students who are transitioning from preschool to kindergarten to have the disability category of developmental delay. So in the past, they were not allowed to have that category. We had to reevaluate those students. Now we feel it's appropriate they can go on to kindergarten with that category. Thanks. It's quick.
So in addition to the supports that we provide as coordinators, we also have some other positions in the district that support our buildings that we kind of oversee here at the district level. Last year, we had the opportunity to bring on a board certified behavior analyst. You may also hear them called a BCBA. And their role really is to support students that may be struggling with self-regulation and as a result demonstrate behaviors that interrupt their learning. Our BCBA is able to serve any student in the district, so even though we kind of oversee her in our special education department, she can serve any student in the district. And typically, if she is requested to a building to help support, she will kind of come in and do what is called a functional behavior assessment, or an FBA, which is just a fancy way of saying that she's going to look for the causes of that challenging behavior, and then work very closely with the staff and the student to implement a behavior intervention plan that will essentially map out the actions that need to be taken to improve and replace those behaviors that are impeding and help that student to be successful in the school setting. Renee kind of spoke to our part-time IEP facilitator for Autism Scholarship and John Peterson Scholarship. So we have a part-time intervention specialist in the district that works with those scholarship providers. She writes those IEPs and facilitates those meetings for all students that are accessing Autism and John Peterson Scholarship. In addition, here in the last couple of years, I talked about the out-of-district placements. They used to all write their, if we had students placed in their program, they would write those IEPs and run those meetings, and of course invite us as the district, but in the last couple years they have shifted that work back to us. So our part-time IEP facilitator has really been instrumental in helping us to write those IEPs and facilitate those IEP meetings as well. Laura Ruffing leads our mental health specialist team in the district. We have 11 mental health specialists that serve in our buildings across our district. And like our BCBA, our mental health specialists are able to support and serve any students in the buildings that they are supporting. So they tend to, while they can do functional behavior assessments, they can help implement behavior plans, they tend to focus a little bit more on like one-on-one counseling, group counseling. They can be a direct service on a student's IEP. And then if they are in a building that does have a district program, they typically partner with that intervention specialist and really work to help support skill building for those students. Last but definitely not least, the most important folks in our department and probably the backbone of our department, I don't know how we would operate without them, is our administrative assistants. We currently have 3. Priscilla Amundsen is on leave right now, but she will be returning to us this summer, which we are super excited about. And she is really kind of our point person of the department. She tends to be a jack of all trades, but her responsibilities include mainly overseeing our home instruction services and then working directly with Kim on overseeing the special education budget. And then Karen Burson and Michelle Donovan, also very instrumental in helping our department to run smoothly. Their work is focused mainly on the data entry of all special education information, and then also just helping us to manage all of the ETR, IEP, and 504 paperwork that comes through our department. So up next, I have the pleasure of welcoming our parent mentor, Colleen, to speak to you about her role and work in our district.
Thank you, Beth. I just want to say how much I really love my role within this district. It's a complicated role, but I think a very important one. This is my second year as a district parent mentor. I'm a parent of a student with a disability, and I use my passion and experience to create strong partnerships to make special education information and processes more accessible to parents. Parent mentors are guides, collaborators, and most importantly, we are peers. For nearly 30 years, Ohio Parent Mentors have helped families navigate local and state special education processes and services. Using our lived experience, we work in collaboration with families, schools, and agencies to create conditions for success for every child. Ohio Parent Mentors are parents of children with disabilities who provide free peer-to-peer support to other families of children with disabilities in Ohio. As a parent mentor, I work closely with the district coordinators to support families. My office space is right there. I'm part of the special education team, and our close proximity allows for open communication, collaboration, and immediate feedback. This year, I have supported over 40 families by attending IEP meetings, talking over the phone, taking time to listen, empathize, and provide resources. And then most importantly, checking back in. How are they doing? What else do they need? What can I provide? An important part of my service is to collaborate with our district employees to provide workshops that parents are interested in. Most recently, I provided an information session at Evening Street, going over the differences between a 504 and the special education process. In the past, last year, I held a sibling workshop. This fall, I collaborated with Steve Griffin to provide a dyslexia workshop. I also worked with Jake Guthrie, Jill Zingery, and the Franklin County Board of Developmental Disabilities and OOD, Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, to provide a secondary transition workshop for families. We are currently working on a self-care series for families centered on yoga with our own district intervention specialist, Maddie Ball. And we are collaborating with the mental health team to provide a family workshop centered on behaviors, and as well with Suzanne Palmer and Kim Marani to provide a twice exceptional workshop as well. I send out a bi-weekly family resource newsletter, keeping parents informed about workshops, community events, at-home and school strategies, support groups, opportunities for students such as summer camp. I believe wholeheartedly in family engagement and building community throughout our buildings. At the start of the year, we had a very successful special education family picnic held at Sutter Park, and we look forward to expanding that this next August, which I need to start planning, for elementary and then separately middle and high school students. I am also in the process of expanding our middle and high school libraries with books focused on disability justice. Disability is part of our students' identity, and they should see themselves reflected in their library choices. Another big part of my role is working with our key communicators. We have 20 parents representing students and families across our district. Our key communicators' role is a huge focus. This parent group provides families with support in each building, as well as crucial feedback that strives to ensure equity throughout our buildings. At our key communicators, we have district staff that come and participate in these meetings, including our district coordinators, but also we've had TJ Cusack come and provide information to us, and of course, Angie Adrian came and was wonderful at our last meeting, I believe. We have talked about the intersection between DEI and special education, and through that process, Toya Spencer, our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, has joined our key communicator team, and this has been a really important work. She often shares the work that she and the DEI champions in the buildings are developing and solicits feedback from the key communicators, which then informs the creation and implementation of DEI projects. Her DEI champions include 4 district IS who are in the BLC and our SELC buildings, and 1 EL staff member. Kim and I have both joined in the Miss Toya Reads projects by reading book selections, and we look forward to continuing and deepening that collaboration. Are we going to the next slide? I don't know if you wrote it before, okay. So again, the purpose of our key communicators is to convey information from their buildings to the committee, as well as information from the committee to their buildings. So you can see that this is a really important piece of our work. One of our projects, which was spoken about before, was hearing from the key communicators about what needs to be written into that transition paperwork that is shared with our district IS, those transitions that happen from elementary school to middle, and then middle to high school. So key communicators had a big role in developing that document. Each parent of the Key Communicator Committee provides their expertise and experience to families within our building, as well as peer support to parents who have questions regarding a specific disability. Having another parent to turn to who has lived a similar experience is invaluable. With 13 disability categories, it is important we have a diverse group of parents who can support our families, and that is why our work is so important. Thank you.
Another really valuable piece of our special education department is our literacy and our literacy coaches. And we are fortunate to have them in the audience tonight. Kendra Prindle and Allison Palermo. Didn't expect me to call them out, but they are here in the audience tonight. And they are, they specialize in reading intervention, but they're also intervention specialists. So they are an integral part to our team. They work with our intervention specialists, they work with our MTSS teams, they work with our IEP teams, they work with principals. They are all over the district helping everyone. We often present them with lots of data, and then they sift through that and are able to make recommendations for our students so that they are getting the appropriate reading intervention. And in addition, then they can also monitor that and make sure that it's all being implemented with fidelity. They are both trainers. Allison is a Wilson language trainer. Kendra is a Just Words trainer. So between the two of them, they provide a lot of training in district to our staff. They do group trainings. They will work with people individually. They do a lot of individual coaching. Allison is also providing a lot of the in-district training for our staff so that they can get their hours for the new dyslexia legislation. So that can happen right here in the district because of her background. And then we have at least one intervention specialist in every building in Worthington who is Wilson trained. And in many of our buildings, we probably have 2, 3, or more intervention specialists who are trained in Wilson reading. And then we probably have another 10 intervention specialists or so who are additionally trained in some type of Orton-Gillingham credential, whether that is our basic language system or OG certification. So they are a very integral part to making sure that we are doing all of the things that we need to do for dyslexia legislation and making sure that our students who have literacy concerns are getting the appropriate intervention.
Okay, so that was a lot of information from a lot of our administrators and the support staff that we have available. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the structure of which we work together to provide that. So up here, the bullets you'll see, obviously we've spoken already a little bit to the participation in AAPL and our ability to collaborate with all of those stakeholders in that department. We have, with the 3 coordinators and myself, weekly meetings. We meet every Tuesday at 11 o'clock from 11 to 1 scheduled, try to protect and block that time to make sure that if there are things that one of us have come across throughout the course of the week that maybe would impact or be, good knowledge for all of us, it just gives us the time and the structured opportunity to come together and make sure that we're staying consistent in the supports and information that we're sharing out. Beth and Renee and Jake spoke to those monthly, quarterly building meetings. So those are set up at the beginning of the year. So the school the building administrators and the intervention specialists know when they're going to be in the building. In addition to their meetings, they have structured times. So there will be a block of 3 to 4 hours where they know that their coordinator is going to be in their building. So if something comes up during their planning time or period, they always have easy access to them. Administrative assistants that we referred to, the 3 of them, we meet monthly with them, and sometimes more, because oftentimes things will come up and they're like, hey, but they're all right there with us. So we meet with them on a regular basis as well, but we try to have a set agenda that they bring to us with questions and ideas. They have wonderful ideas about things. They've set up a lot of platforms to kind of make and streamline some of the work that they know best. The related services, as shared, those are structured also. School psychologists meet monthly. Speech pathologists and OTs meet either monthly or quarterly, depending on their needs at the current time. And then the family and community membership, obviously we participate in the Curriculum Liaison Council and then the Key Communicator Program that Colleen just shared. And I can't see that on it. Oh, director and cabinet meetings, that's what's down there. So obviously we participate in cabinet once or twice a month, depending on the schedule. And then I also participate in Angie's director team, so I can bring any of initiatives that we're working on, things that we have that would impact with the elementary director, the secondary director, and we participate in those principal meetings as well. So there may be times where we present at principals meetings, elementary and secondary, but even if we're not there to share information, we always make ourselves available to the building principals at those meetings in case they have questions or things they want to run past us. I think at some point you've probably heard that we implemented a new software program this school year, and Jake is going to walk us through a little bit of why we went there and how that has benefited the district thus far.
So about this time last year, we started to explore ways to streamline some of our processes, especially in the area of paperwork. And for those of you that have been in the district 10 plus years, you'll remember that the special ed department used to use a program called IEP Anywhere to help develop and write IEPs. So Same Goal is the same company as IEP Anywhere. They just rebranded because they do more than just IEPs. So it's the same company that we actually worked with 10 years ago. I believe we first, when we worked with that program, when we added Infinite Campus, we transitioned away from that program because there was a writing ability within Infinite Campus. But after doing some research with the team and looking through some things, we felt like it was a good direction to head and come back to, given all the paperwork and a lot of the documentation required in our department. So working alongside with Jeff Collette and his team with the tech department, we've implemented that starting about in the spring of last year. We started the process of starting to get the back end things from the tech side and integrating with Infinite Campus, and also training our staff throughout the April, May months, and also throughout the summer to get everybody up to speed on that process. As a former IS, I felt like it was a pretty easy transition because the forms that are aligned through with IDEA state forms are so easy to work with within the program. And basically, Same Goal is a user-friendly documentation platform that allows you to write documents, state forms within that platform, and collaborate and edit similar to the way you would within like a Google Docs type program. But it also allows for a lot of other things that we believe has benefited our staff and our families. So from our staff's standpoint, they're able to collaborate and do real-time editing throughout the documents with things like autosave and formatting that are very conducive to making a document look clean and nice, especially when it's involving such important things. Our staff definitely, I believe, have been very happy with the amount of time it's saved them. A lot of the different documentation that was required before sometimes were done on different formats, either Microsoft Word or Google Doc or something like that. And this has allowed for most of those documents to be within the same platform and saved, similar to the way Google Drive works, where it saves it for each individual student, allowing staff to be able to see the documents and work within them. Also, I believe there's a huge benefit for the parents. We've gotten great feedback from parents where they're able to get the documents shared with them quickly. digitally. They're able to interact with the document with a live document. So if it's shared with the parent, it's not a PDF that's static. It's a live link. So if any changes are made, they can see that instantaneously. They can actually see when someone's in a field making that change. You can see it on your screen if you're following at either in person in the meeting or at home maybe during a virtual meeting. There's also digital signatures built in, which has been nice to be able to have that feature, especially given the move to some additional virtual meetings. And also there's a translation piece that allows documents to be fully translated in 18 different languages. The company is in the process of adding an additional 60 languages. And so that way those documents can be shared in the family's native language and allow for better collaboration and communication during those different types of meetings. General education staff have instant access to final documents when it's integrated in Infinite Campus, so they see it on that student's page on Infinite Campus, and they also have the ability to work and collaborate within those documents as well instead of sending information over and having it added later on. It also helps from an administrative side, compliance-wise. It has instant compliance checks within documents that helps to make sure that you're filling out all the proper dates correctly and filling out the fields that you're required to fill out. And also, we're able to run reports pretty quickly. That helps with our programming, so we can run numbers very quickly. We can do it by building and grade and sort, and it gives us the ability to be able to pull information from IEPs, ETRs very quickly and accurately, so we can get those numbers and use those to help make decisions for our team. And probably most importantly, it is a unified platform. So IEPs, ETRs, REMP plans, so those are reading improvement and monitoring plans through our K through 4 literacy program. So our instructional coaches and Steve Griffin, as we talked about, they've implemented this year to write all REMP plans in the elementary. Before that, they were kind of saved in different folders, and it made some of the transition year to year a little more difficult, and housing all those documents and organizing those. This streamlines that and has them all in one spot. So from year to year, when those documents move to another staff member, you can see there's a 360-degree version history, so you can go back and see. Sometimes you have to look in the past to go forward, and you can have access to all the previous information to help you make drive decisions moving forward as well. And 504s are on there as well. So having those all in one place makes that really helpful from building to building, from grade level to grade level, from staff member to staff member, to make that process streamline and collaborate as a team to make decisions for the students.
Okay, so the last final bit of information we're going to share with you tonight are some of the just basic numbers that I know everyone's always interested in. So up on the screen now, you'll see the first slide actually has the number of students and then a percentage of growth that you've seen, and it goes from 2019 through 2022. We take a lot of the information of the data off of our ODE state reports, so 22-23 school year will be released later this spring or over the summer. But you'll see, obviously, at this point, we've grown over the past 4 years of data that's up there. You can see an increase each year. This next slide actually takes the Worthington City School District for each year at the percentage of students with disabilities in our district in comparison to the Ohio average of students. And you will see that we have, as of last year, started to kind of tweak at and above a little bit, and we're about maybe 0.5% over the state average currently. And again, the 22-23 school year numbers will be released later this year. In reference to the students that we serve, this is the pie graph updated from our last presentation. And on here, you'll see the majority of our students fall into one of these categories. You'll see an others category. So obviously there are 13 categories of disabilities, but we've highlighted here the ones that are most heavily served in their district, with our specific learning disabilities being at 38%, next speech disability and autism at 14%, and then the other categories at 7%, with ED, emotional disturbance, and intellectual disability at 3% and 5%. So that's just a breakdown of the categories of our students with disabilities currently in the district. And then we were just going to end the presentation with our chart once again, which we know you've seen. It's on the website just for the community. If you ever have a question in reference to anything to do with special education, some on the left column there, some things that you might come up with, and then it'll kind of take you through the flow chart in reference to who you would contact in reference to any questions or concerns. So that ends our presentation. It was a little longer than we anticipated. Sorry about that, but we are all still here and be welcome to any questions.
Thank you very much. That felt like drinking water from a
I know.
water from a fire hydrant.
Fire hydrant.
But that was excellent. Excellent. At this time, we will. I'll call on board members to, if they have questions or comments. And it was suggested that we try to integrate with our comments or somehow our 1 minute discussion of the book, Demystifying Disability, what to know, what to say, and how to be an ally. So each of you is free to do that as you wish, if you wish. I can't force you to do it, but I'll start with whomever wants to start. All right, Kelly, go for it.
So Jake was talking about transitioning from middle school to high school. And now we're getting ready to have big construction things happening. And so how are you adjusting those transitions to kind of communicate with families? How are you looking into, in conjunction with the transition of students?
Right. So as the administrative teams and the high school teams meet to talk about how this transition process is going to happen, we are always in consultation with them. So all of the students with disabilities will be considered with that. And then anything that's going to specifically impact in terms of structure and building, is that what you're referring to during that like that transition time? They're consulting with Jake and myself, mainly for the high schools, in terms of to make sure that we're continuing to provide appropriate space and service for the students.
Can I ask a follow-up question along that
Sure.
line? Because I had that same question. Obviously, because we're going to be going through construction projects that are going to be phased, I'm assuming that's something that'll have to be talked about every school year, because I have had parents express to me, especially parents who have kids who are in 8th grade now, moving into the high school, knowing that this is coming and they don't know, what that's going to look like for their student because maybe they have a physical disability. So I'm assuming that'll be part of the process probably every year for multiple years, even if the child's within the high schools already.
Right. And I've actually had a couple of parents reach out to me, probably maybe even the same ones with specific. And I think when Renee had mentioned any year when we're transitioning students, elementary, middle to high, we oftentimes have situations where we'll do some specific structures in place and visits and stuff over the summer. So as we have those transition meetings this year, knowing that construction and those shifts are going to be made in the next year or two, we'll certainly have those conversations and communicate with those families and provide additional supports if necessary for those students. We kind of know, like at this point, because we know the students that we've transitioned, so we know those students already that currently have additional supports in place that we can, predict the impact for them.
Okay, thank you.
Kim, I have one question.
Sure.
Related to the new position, the BCBA. Have you seen that individual spend most of their time at any particular level within the district?
Yeah, I would say she spends 90% of her time at the elementary level. So access to her support and services kind of filters through Rob and I, just when we brought her on, because there was a desire for, you hear about this support and everyone wants, to have access to that. So just to kind of help her be effective, we're aware of her schedule and the cases she's working with. She gets consent from the families. And so I have her full caseload, and the bulk of her time is spent in general education and special education classrooms at the elementary.
And now is always that tricky question of, do you have more need than for one person?
Right.
Is the resource making, presumably she's making a difference, right?
Mhm.
And then you see the need and you're trying to figure out all of these needs and how you best structure her time for those needs. But
Right.
when you try something new, sometimes it's like, oh, look at this, look at the huge, impact we can make, and especially at such a young age, right? Because that's just going to flow through the rest of their time in education and presumably beyond.
Right. So she spends her time when she's in a classroom. She may be working with a particular student, but she also really focuses on building capacity within those classrooms. So she does a lot of on-the-job coaching with regular ed teachers for full classroom management and support, as well as our intervention specialists on child-specific support. She has spent time at the middle schools and high schools. It's just been less time, but a big piece of her job is to help support and build capacity with those families and with those classrooms. We have some families that reach out to her even, to have conversation about transitioning the interventions that she has suggested and put in place at school. So she'll work with families as well just to build capacity so it's not just her being the only person. She also integrates very strongly with our mental health team within the buildings, as well as the school counseling team and all of those extra student support.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Maybe they can't hear me.
Go ahead, Kelly.
This is for Colleen.
Okay.
You talked about, it's for anyone who wants to answer, but hi, Colleen. Hi. So you talked about a newsletter that you sent out, and who does that go to?
Those go to, sorry. That goes to the special education families.
Okay.
And then it's posted on the website of the Worthington, the Worthington Education website, so it's available to reference at any time.
The newsletter is
Yes.
posted on there. Okay.
Mhm. Under the special ed tab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Colleen, while you're there, I will just share that I've heard excellent things regarding your work and your work specifically with the key communicators and what a valuable resource that is throughout the district. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I will add on to that and just say that the workshops that you spoke of that you're working on planning, I think those all sound great. And I hope that we can find good ways to make sure that those are getting communicated out, not only to our special education families, but to all of our families.
To the whole district.
To Kelly's point and question about your newsletter, which is so helpful, and I receive it as a parent of students with disabilities. Just making sure that everybody's aware, because those may be programs that everybody wants to participate in.
Thank you. And I forgot to say that I do send it out to the principals so that they can also include it in their weekly distribution to families in every school building.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jennifer.
Okay, I kind of based my question on our book that I thought we were supposed to review and then ask a question. So I kind of based it on that because the book that we read, Demystifying Disability, and I think Jake might be holding a copy of it. It kind of looks the same. It's written by someone with a disability that sits in a wheelchair. So I really appreciated that perspective. And I really liked, she had some pages where she talked about proper terms to use for people with disabilities. And then she had some pages with history of special ed, and although I knew some of it, I didn't know all of it. I learned a lot from looking at that. So, and then some of it was a little frustrating because she's pretty cut and dry on her opinions on things and not giving pros and cons, but a lot of good resources. So I guess my question kind of related to this, and we've heard bits and pieces and we have lots of resources out there, especially Colleen and meeting with the parents and all of the administrators that help with parents. But is there like when a parent learns that their child has a disability and they're going to be headed down the path with IEPs and different things, like where do they start learning? Where's their best resource? How do they learn how to navigate this?
So the process typically obviously starts at the school-based team. All of the principals and the school psychologists, the MTSS teams have Colleen's contact information. So they're asked to share that with them. And when Colleen speaks to like the 40-some families, it's probably an underestimate on her part of the families that reach out to her. She's an incredible resource in terms of just being that listening and guidance ear. In addition, obviously, each of our school-based teams, which are our building administrators, are very knowledgeable about the process. Our school psychologists are always a part of that team. Intervention specialists are in that, in those meetings as well. And then we try to make sure that the communication is out there in terms of which special ed coordinator, and we all respond to questions and reach out to families that, we know have some questions or concerns on the process. So I feel like we have a lot of structures in place in the district to help, and that's one of the reasons we have this chart up there too, like even for 504s, like if you have questions or concerns about things, please reach out to anyone in the department and we'll certainly navigate them to the right place. Sure.
We also have a special education roadmap that starts from the beginning all the way until IEP services, and that is available in, I believe, 14 languages. So
on the web, is it on the website?
Yes, I believe it is on the website, and I can send it out again.
Okay, thank you.
So if you go to the under the special education homepage on the district website and just click on Colleen, it'll say parent mentor, click on that, and then it'll take you to her page, and all of those resources are listed under her page there.
Okay, thank you. Okay. One other question, maybe for Jake. Dublin Area Career Center. If a student decides they want to go to the Career Center and they're on an IEP, what kind of help and guidance and resources are at the Career Center for them?
Yeah, so we work with Delaware staff. They have what's called a VOCE. It's Vocational Occupational Service Educator. And that person helps coordinate a group of intervention specialists at DACC. So that can look at two different ways. If a student is full-time DACC, we work with them they write the IEP, and then I'll attend most of the meetings, if not all of the meetings, to serve as district rep to make sure that it follows our compliance checks. But then they primarily provide the services for that student. If they're a part-time DACC, where their program's maybe a half of a day, they would receive their services within our district, and they would have an intervention specialist that works with us, and then they would go to Delaware Career Center with their program, and we would work with their staff to make sure they're receiving accommodations and the supports they would need within those classrooms, but the services would still be delivered within our program.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you for integrating your question in with the book. And I'm going to call on the other three of you, but first I'll follow the pattern, I guess, of the majority rather than the way we're supposed to do it, as Jennifer probably did it. But I do have a number of questions here. First of all, I hope I misheard, but I don't think I did. We must do all the work for non-district students who are at Worthington Christian?
Right, so we're responsible for the paperwork, basically.
Even though they don't live in our district?
Right, so because they're in our district of service.
Okay.
So we do.
Do we get reimbursed by the state for that? Okay, that's.
No.
All right. Okay.
So that's been a little bit of the uptick of work for our school psychologists, right? So they are now having to pick up. Worthington Christian we've had for a while. They just moved their elementary program within our boundaries within these last couple of years, and the others that Renee had shared. And then our 0.5 intervention specialist that does our scholarships, like Beth shared, we've kind of tasked her to help support writing some of those documents. Even out of district students that we've placed in some of those programs, they used to always write those documents, and they've kind of given that responsibility back to us. So the paperwork piece has increased for our district staff on that part.
And so the flip side of my question is, what about the kids going to, from our district, our resident kids going to Columbus Academy or CSG or Wellington? Do we also have to do the paperwork for them?
If they have services in there, then Columbus completes those, right? Yeah, so Columbus would complete those if they're receiving services there.
Okay, because they're in the city, in
Right.
Columbus School District.
Right, now our coordinators will attend those meetings just in support, right? So we are always invited to any of our student meetings that are outside of our district.
Okay. And then we have 116 kids on either autism vouchers or John Peterson vouchers. And I guess it's an unfair question, but I am going to pursue it maybe with our treasurer as to whether we get reimbursed by the state for, for following and taking care and doing the paperwork and monitoring those 116 students who are getting vouchers from the state.
Right.
You don't know about that. Okay,
Yeah,
that's fair. You got enough on your plate anyway. Okay. There was a mention, and maybe Ms. Winland would be the person to answer, but there was a mention about when kids must leave Sutter Park. Is there I know we don't want 10-year-olds there, but is there some maximum age?
I mean, I'll keep them all forever, but I'm not allowed. So it goes the same for all gen ed students. If they're 5 by September 30th, they're eligible to go to kindergarten. When they're 6 by September 30th, they have to go to kindergarten.
They have to go, no matter.
No matter what.
What's okay.
Correct.
But okay.
Yes,
Although
that is a requirement by law.
Okay, we must do it even though if the kids weren't at Sutter Park and we're just at, I know of, mostly for sports reasons, but I know of kids who have not started kindergarten that early, mostly for sport. Actually, all the ones I know of are for sports reasons because their dads wanted them to be several years older than their peers.
Right.
Okay, but we have to.
Yes, we have to send them if they're 6 by September 30th.
Okay. Then I have another question, which might be more for Jake.
Charlie, before Tricia
go ahead,
walks
sure.
away, can I just say, and I'm sure I'm not the only person sitting up here who hears amazing things related to the work that you do at Sutter Park.
Oh, thank you.
You and your
I
team.
have a wonderful staff.
Absolutely. It is a gem, absolutely, of our school district.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, I was going to save my compliments to the end, but ditto. But I agree. Yeah, ditto.
He was standing up there.
Yeah,
People
right,
keep
yeah,
coming
no,
back
very
and
good.
forth.
No,
So I
that-
was like, why? In case
no.
she doesn't come back up.
No, actually, yeah, mine's for the. But so my question is, at some point, how old is a child when or student, actually young woman or young man, actually age out of services?
Their 22nd birthday.
On their 22nd
22nd
birthday. So my question I've always had is, if they turn 22 on November 30th, is that the end?
Yes.
Or do we don't they don't finish the school year?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. So we allow them to stay to the end of the semester.
I'm sorry?
We allow them to stay at the end of the semester.
Finish the semester. So if it's in January, February, they get to finish the year. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
and typically, like we obviously had that situation quite a bit because birthdays happen between October and April.
Right.
We had those conversations a year in advance to start talking about what that could look like, and we even try to structure the transition plans around that to know if they're going to finish sometime in that halfway point through the next year, that we've connected with them with the right supports, that it wouldn't just be like it's just everything's kind of stopping. So that's very much a part of their individual transition plans, and thought of ahead of time. When they start turning 20, we start thinking about that for sure.
Okay, but it's on their 22nd birthday, and then we I like the fact we allow, which would be young women or young men by now, but we let them finish out the semester. That's okay. All right, I had a question maybe for Colleen, although as she pointed out, she holds a whole workshop for this, so if it's not possible to do it, maybe we'll do it offline. But the distinction between a 504 plan and IEP. You said that was a whole workshop.
That was a whole workshop.
Your elevator speech.
So I would love to speak. So the different laws, IDEA and 504, and that is, I believe, Do you want me to go through my whole workshop?
No.
Okay.
The elevator speech, the thumbnail sketch.
So the special education process is taking a look and seeing if the child needs individualized education. And the 504 process is looking at, does the child need accommodations to access their education versus intervention and specially designed instruction. So that is the key distinction between a 504 and an IEP. 504 being accommodations. It could be needing to sit closer to the teacher. It could be that you need extra time on a test, whereas individualized education is going to be goals that your child can work towards during the year.
Okay.
Did I get it? Okay.
Thank you very much. And that was an excellent elevator speech. That was a great thumbnail sketch. Okay. And what is an ETR meeting?
It's an evaluation team report, so it's the process of a multi-factored evaluation. So when a child is suspected of having a disability, the school team will do what's called a planning form. So the school psychologist will sit down with the team, and it has all the different categories of evaluations, areas of evaluation, and they will determine as a team what areas we need to evaluate for each particular child. After that is completed, the team gets consent from the family for any testing that is planned on that document, and then they have 60 calendar days to complete that testing and hold the evaluation team meeting. And what comes out of that is the evaluation team report, or the ETR. Okay. So simply it qualifies whether, or indicates whether a student qualifies for special ed services or not.
And is that a meeting that, unlike the IEP meetings, that parents do not attend?
Oh, no, parents are there.
Parents do attend.
Parents are there
ETR.
for the planning,
Okay.
and then they're there for the team meeting.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
And then finally, I just want to make sure I'm clear about our feeder patterns for students, well, in the, what's it called, the SCLC. Is that primarily due to lack of a number of students?
So the Structured Communication Learning Center is our largest program at the elementary level. So we currently have 6 classrooms. I'm sorry, we currently have 7 classrooms, and we already know that we're adding 1 for next year, so we would have 8 classrooms. The challenge is with 6, a caseload of 6 or a class list of 6. So we have to program that in buildings strategically across the district, knowing that we don't have enough students in every building that we would have that, but yet if we can't spread it out too much, because then, the way it would lay out in terms of where the students' home schools are. So we try to keep them as close to their home school, or their what would be their designated elementary school, in the buildings that we provide that service. So they're Worthington Hills, Bluffsview, Worthington Park, and then Slade Hill and Wilson Hill.
Okay.
We do evaluate, like every year when we talk about staffing, we look at programming and try to make the best decisions, moving forward in planning. So we will continue to look at those feeder patterns as we move forward.
And then they all go to Kilbourne Middle School and to Thomas Worthington.
That's the current programming.
But Kim, would you explain that it's kind of a funnel, right? So we have a certain number of elementary programs, but the reason we only have 2 at the middle school level and 2 at the high school level. Can you explain that funnel?
Right. So they're, like I said, soon to be 8 across the district, and then they feed into, right now we currently have 2 middle school programs and 2 high school programs. If you separated that out, you would not have an equal amount of students across both sides of the district. So the way that with the students' population growing and moving up, it does kind of go from that wider range of elementary programs into just 2 for the grade levels of 6 through 8. There was one point in time where we've had to adjust how many sections we have at high school versus middle school versus elementary based on how those students move through the grades.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you all for a tremendous presentation. And please don't apologize for the length. I'll take one that long, that informative any time of the day on any subject. That was a great presentation. And yeah, I've heard tremendous things about all of you and about our program. But yeah, the number of kudos that I've heard from Ms. Winland is tremendous, and also for calling across the district. I've run into a number of people who said she's been a godsend for them or their family. And,
Yes, we're very fortunate to have her. We very much enjoy her.
Yeah. So I want to thank you all for a tremendous presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
And
We're not wrapping up, are we?
not if you don't know. Go ahead.
I mean, I just asked one question early on, and so I just have a couple more, and then I wanted to share. No, that's okay. I wanted to share about the book. Can you help me? Can you explain just a little bit more about? You mentioned that we'll have 8 classrooms at the middle school level. Is that what you said?
Elementary.
Oh, 8 classrooms at the elementary level, and then at the middle school level, do we know what we're looking?
2. There are 2 programs scheduled to be at Kilbourne Middle School next year.
And when you say 2 programs, 2
classrooms.
2 classrooms.
Mhm.
Okay.
So there's 2 teachers in the Structured Communication Learning Center. Each can have a caseload of 6 students.
Okay. And have we ever been structured where we had one on one side of the district and one on the other, so that those students were potentially funneling into a middle school where they had peers?
For the Structured Communication Learning Center, we have not.
Okay. Okay. Did you want to share something on that, Trey?
Yeah, I mean, just to add, so it just doesn't break down evenly. So you might have to have 2 and 1 then, if you really want to try to pull that off.
No, I understand. I see what you're saying.
Because the cap is 6.
Like
and
you
can't
don't
go
just
over the cap
have
is 6, and it's not
magically
that
have
you've got
6 on one
6
side and
right.
6 on the other.
It just doesn't.
So
Completely understand that.
If I took the current middle school students right now, there would be, there's 12 of them. It would break down as 8 to one side of the district and 4 to the other, which if we split that way, then we would, like Dr. Bowers just said, we would have to add a program, and that also comes with a para to one side of the district and spread that to 3 classrooms to serve the same 12 students.
Okay, that's helpful to understand. Thank you. I
You're
understand.
welcome. Yeah.
We don't have magic balance between the 2. I just wanted to share on the demystifying disabilities. One, I wanted to ask Jake if he was willing to share, if he read it and if he had something that he wanted to share as well, just because
yeah, we all read
a
it.
copy of it. Although I won't.
This is called a cold call.
Well, Jake, I will tell you that this was the first time I read it, and it was recommended by a parent in the district, Jessica Hagland, who's actually here tonight, and I wanted to express gratitude because, I am one of those individuals who have found myself at times like stumbling over the words that I'm using and wondering if I'm saying things the way I should be saying them. But what was so meaningful about the book was not just more human verbiage and more eloquent ways and etiquette ways to say things, but the reframing of thinking and how to view matters holistically, which I can't say like you read it and you walk away and you're like, okay, got this. It's clearly appropriately set forth as something that's a journey. But there were 2 quotes that I just wanted to share. Anyone who's listening who might think, is this something I should pick up? And I would say absolutely yes. First of all, it's a very quick and easy read of like 150 pages. But one was, accessibility is about making things more equitable so that disabled people have the same opportunities and support to thrive as do non-disabled people. It's about removing barriers to participation, engagement, and understanding so that all people, regardless of ability, can experience the world around us to the fullest extent possible in ways that work for our minds and our bodies. And then later on in the book, there was a quote where they just acknowledged the fact that it's not a one-time thing. It's about a series of choices to build relationships, learn together, disagree without silencing each other, and it's about building up our capacity to honor the differences and appreciate the messiness. And one of the things that made me think about was our student feedback sessions. And I don't think we've ever had a student feedback session focused on our students with disabilities. And I think that would be, I think that's one, after reading this, something that I view as a miss and would be a wonderful opportunity and would just encourage us to lean into that space. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much for the presentation tonight.
You're very welcome.
And I'm not really going to put you on the spot just because you were holding the book.
We all had, I was going to say, we all read the book, and this morning when we met for an hour or so prior to this, we did have conversation around it, so we all kind of did what you guys did tonight in reference to, things that kind of touched us in reference to the book. So it is a very good resource. Colleen already had it on her shelf as well, obviously.
Can I share a few more comments as well?
Yes.
So I just wanted to, first of all, thank you all for being here this evening and sharing so much information with us. I myself have been in the special education world with my own children for quite a few years, and I find that anytime I hear a presentation, there's something new that I take away that I didn't know before, and hopefully our community appreciates understanding more about what you all do and the students in our district who you serve. So I do want to share a couple of reflections on the book as well, and I think my comments will be very similar to Nikki's because I appreciated in the book the language and the explanation of some of it. I found myself really learning quite a few things about how we express, just the way we say things, and in a way that's, and I think the book did a good job of not making you feel bad for saying things a certain way, but showing you or the author talking about how you can grow in that space, right? And I think that's what's important. But I loved the first quote that you shared because as I was listening to your presentation, and I think it was Beth that said the phrase smooth transition, and you kind of echoed that through your presentation when you talked about all of the different transitions that we have for middle to high school and for elementary to middle. And I think that the work that's being done in that space is great. It's different than it was for my oldest going through that process, and I think that it's very helpful for families. But back to the quote you shared, that anything we can do to take away some of those barriers that make it more difficult that's one of them, right? Showing the transitions of what this is actually going to look like for families is super important because they have, students with disabilities have enough other things that they may be trying to navigate. And I just think that that's super important, and I'm glad that we're doing more in that space. I do have one question about post-secondary transition. I believe we have somebody that coordinates that other than Jake, is that correct? And maybe I missed that in your presentation?
No, so Jill Zingery is our job training specialist, I think. Is that her official title? She's been with the district for 20 plus years. So she originally just worked on the side of job training with students that were in that, what I previously talked about, where they'd be working a full-time job employed, and she'd work with those. And a few years ago, she started to take over and work with that and with the ACC and some of the programs. So prior to me being in this position, that was what had Beth worked with Jill doing. And then so we kind of worked together on that. So,
okay.
So we have 4 transition coaches that work at both high schools as well. So Jill works a lot with them, and they run those internship enclave programs during the day, and Jill kind of oversees that as well. So.
Okay, thank you for clarifying all of that. I just have a couple other comments. I wanted to make a comment about the same goal system that we're using and the ability for families to be able to both have virtual meetings and those forms to all be online, which is great. I've been able to have meetings myself for my own kids that way, and that's a really great improvement in terms of accessibility for families, right? And being able to have those live documents and all of that. I do want to circle back to kind of the question that Nikki was asking about the SCLC. So I know, Kim, you said that we have, like when we get to the middle school level, we have 8 students on one side of the district and 4 on the other. And that's, I'm assuming that's currently?
That's currently, yeah, I was just using the current breakdown as an example.
Okay, because obviously we've had a little bit of a shift here because now with Slate Hill now feeding to Kilbourne High School, we have more kids in the SCLC that are being, are going into the other feeder, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And so they're not with their peer groups in terms of their school peer groups.
Right, and the breakdown that
Currently,
I
as
was
this
giving
is.
you is basically their homeschool. So keep in mind that a lot of these students are, when they're in accessing SCLC services, they're not in their homeschool. So when I say
Right.
Wilson Hill, that would be a Thomas feed or pattern, but that doesn't mean that they're automatically a Thomas student. So I was talking about the current Kilbourne Middle School students looking at their homeschool, not the elementary program that they would feed from.
Okay, so that is
Right.
their home school, their assigned
right.
elementary based upon the neighborhood that they live in.
Exactly.
Not where
They
they're
were
assigned
received.
into that SCLC.
Correct.
So do we know what those numbers are?
So we keep a running sheet of the students that receive services and what their home schools are, their home elementary schools are. I'm sorry, I can't tell you the actual
Okay.
breakdown right now. I have
Okay,
it.
that's
I
okay.
can get it for you.
Okay.
But we do keep a running log of that each year.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And I think that's all my questions.
Okay, I do have a, go ahead, yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed the book. Thank you all for your presentation too. You're
welcome.
It's always a good refresher. I'm like Amy and my students we've been through the special education process. Both went to Sutter, and so there's some familiarity, but there's also always something that you learn. Same with, it's been a while since I've read this book. I read it once before in a book club, and just even reading it again, it just goes back to Nikki's point of like going, whatever that is.
I think.
Going back to, this is a foundation, right? And so what I liked about the book is that she talks a lot about, this is my perspective, these are the people I talk to, these are my lived experiences and lived experiences that she learned of, but that there is a plethora, my mother would be proud, of, other perspectives, other lived experiences that you can't just read this book and go check, okay, I know everything I need to know. But also that we're going to make mistakes and mishaps in the meantime. And so one quote that I like that she said, but I believe that being transparent about our missteps is how we make progress. And so I hope that we can continue as a district to evaluate our process and be intentional to continue to assess the way that we're doing things and make sure that we're doing things the best way for our students. And so I did like hearing all of the newness, like the new platform that for documents that come through, and Colleen's new workshops and the new key communicators. And so I appreciate that we're making new connections, and I just hope that as a district we continue to do that, because this is, like she says in the book, it is a journey.
A journey.
And there's always ways to learn. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Was that a minute, Trent?
We didn't have a time on. Anything else from anyone else before okay, I have one more question that comes out of this book. Do we do any kind of accessibility training, either technology or physical, for our staff, for teachers? The reason I ask is because I teach at OSU and I have to do several hours of accessibility. I get to do several hours of accessibility training every year, especially in electronic technology and platforms and so forth, so that all our students have equal access to all learning opportunities. And I was just wondering if we do anything like that.
So if we have students that need the support of technology or some type of physical equipment, we have trainings specifically to the staff that work with those students that will provide. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. We also have a physical therapist and our adaptive PE teacher that will work with staff, regular ed and special ed staff, to support any type of physical support that a student may need to make sure that we're safely providing those supports to staff. So I guess, in short, on an as-needed basis, based on students' particular challenges that they have, anyone that works with those students, we make sure that those staff members are equipped with the technology and/or information they need to safely provide services.
Thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that. And now my, first of all, I have to thank, I didn't know who it was who had recommended it to you, Nikki, but I want to thank Jessica for this. And my wife said this is the highest compliment I can give a book. I read it twice. My wife was asking me, she said, I thought you read this yesterday, Charlie. She saw me reading it on Saturday, and then Sunday I said, yeah, this book was so good and there's so much here I don't know that I have to read it twice. And in fact, I found it so useful, and she emphasizes the importance of educating ourselves, and she gives a lot of references, both videos, books, articles, and so forth. I have already reserved about 7 or 8 books at the library that she recommended that was in here. And secondly, and this is for all of you, I came across a couple of disability workshops. The first one's totally free. It's at noon on Wednesday, March 1st. Judy Human, who's mentioned in here a number of times, she's giving a workshop on disability rights, and it's free. If you're interested in it, I'll be glad to send you the link if you will contact me afterwards or offline. And secondly, OSBA on Friday, March 24th is having a special education law workshop at OSBA right up the street here on High Street. And I'm going to ask that at least I'm going to attend it as a result totally of this book. I'll ask to have that put on the agenda for next meeting, and I don't think there's a rush because I think there'll be availability. And secondly, there's no early bird special, so we don't need to amend the agenda tonight to do it. But if you're interested too, I think, assuming the board approves, we could go to those. So those two things. Thirdly, I took out of the book actually some of the same things Jennifer did. That was the individual first language or person first language versus the identity first language. I found that because I've been so focused on person first language, and she makes a strong argument the other way. I found that. I found the history section, her quote from Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is my favorite quote in this area. I do some teaching in this area. So I found that. So the history I really thought the history was very good. She kind of diminished it. But for me, my big takeaway was what Nikki was talking about. Accessibility is just another component of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's all about making sure that all our students, regardless of who they are, where they come from, that they have equitable access and they're fully included and they add to the diversity of our entire school district. And so that was I thought she did a good job on that. And with respect to the accessibility, I hope we do everything within our power to make sure every single part of Thomas Worthington High School and Worthington Kilbourne High School are fully accessible to all our students as we're going through this renovation and rebuilding program. I understand got real constraints at Linworth experiential program and so forth, but I'm focusing primarily, this is the perfect time, in my opinion, to make sure that those two schools that we are renovating right now and putting money into right now are fully accessible. Every single part of it's fully accessible to every student, regardless of where they're from and who they are. So that's my soapbox. But thank you. Now then, we can, okay, any other questions, comments?
No, I was just going to say that I actually attended the special education law workshop that OSBA puts on.
Last year?
Oh, I attended it at the OSBA conference,
okay.
and it was very good. I highly recommend. attending that.
This is all day. Actually, this runs from, I wrote it down here, 8:30 to 3:30 on Friday. So this is,
Okay, thank you so
yeah,
much.
thank you. Thank
Please
you.
feel
This
free
was
to
awesome.
reach out anytime.
All right. Thank you. And we cannot resume the meeting until I figure out how to close the presentation and get back to the agenda. I'm sorry, but this is not accessible to one who is technologically challenged as I am. Do you have any idea how to close that?
Time Charlie opens in a separate window, so you might still have a window with your agenda open.
Yeah, my problem is I've got so many open. Yeah, because I was preparing for today's. All right, I will just bring it up again. Yeah, but the tree, it's out of sight. No,
While that's being
here,
determined,
I'll get to it.
would we be able to take a quick 5-minute recess?
This would be unprecedented, and I said I would follow the tradition, but I also said that when tradition makes no sense, I got a biological.
Do I say point of privilege? I don't know what
Right.
the right terminology is. That right?
Here's
Okay,
what I'm doing.
thank you.
Oh, so we're going to take a recess?
5 minutes.
Okay, go for it. No, I don't think we need under Robert's rules, you don't need a motion to take a temporary recess as long as no action is conducted. I'm just going to put. Okay, thank you for your patience and forbearance for me. At this time, the policy committee will present a first reading of the proposed policy with respect to naming rights.
Thank you, Charlie. Kelly, feel free to jump in. I think that we have laid the foundation for this particular policy and what we're looking to do as a district. Hopefully, what you've read through here with the draft policy is self-explanatory, consisting of two different types of naming rights, one in consideration and one in recognition, and trying to frame some boundaries around both of those and the granting of the naming rights. As you've likely seen, whether it falls into either category, it would come to us for approval. And I don't think there's anything else in particular that I wanted to call out other than maybe the termination of the naming rights and our attempt to create some sort of structure and understanding around if there were to be a demolition of a building or a facility, that we would try to, the way in which we would continue a naming rights and recognition beyond that, but then if it were demolished again, at that point it would end. Not an easy thing to navigate, but an important thing to navigate given that we have current naming rights and recognition in our school district that are very meaningful, obviously, that's why they're there. And so trying to create a framework to continue to honor those individuals. And with that, I will turn it over to Kelly if there's anything in particular you want to call out, and then we'll open it up for questions or comments.
I didn't. I mean, I talked to Jennifer right before the meeting. She was asking me about how complicated was it to put this together. And I wanted to say it wasn't that complicated, but it kind of was, just because this isn't something that happens around Central Ohio or across the country very often. And then the models that we use, which we looked at Shaker Heights and we looked at Upper Arlington, they have one high school. And so we're looking at it from a slightly different angle, in that we're making sure that we consider both high schools the same and how we're looking at that. So that was really just the base overview of how we put it all together and how we came up with some of the wording and terminology. I do have just some typo things I'll share with you later.
Perfect.
I'll ask a question if that's okay. Since I started it with Kelly before the meeting, asking her some questions, just to clarify, this isn't a Neola policy. They don't have anything like this. So I really appreciate the two of you, and probably Randy and whoever else, working on this and looking at others, because we've kind of talked about this for a while, that it's something we need as we name various buildings and fields. And so my only question is, has it been run by our attorney?
It has.
I mean, I figured it had been, but just to make sure.
Absolutely. No.
Okay.
And we really did try to dive into the history of how have we named buildings or spaces or facilities within our district, and there isn't a lot of documentation about that. And so just as a good start for us to be able to have some kind of process and system that we do going forward. So that's helpful.
Absolutely.
Well, and it absolutely seems like now is the right time for us to formalize this, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say I appreciate the work that you both did, and along with the rest of the committee, to put this together. And
Excellent.
I'm sure that it will help us navigate this. I'm sure we'll have questions along the way.
Yeah.
Always, right?
Yep.
Anybody else? I also thank the committee for the work put into doing this, and I think it is really important that we have a policy and a process for how we name everything, whether it be a football field or a basketball court or anything else. I do have a little bit of concerns, and I haven't, but I have some concerns about equity and how it might be used in the future, or even, I guess, in the short term with 2 high schools, but in 11 elementary schools, to the extent people pay for having things named after them, and whether, I guess it was Was that discussed at all, the equity aspect with respect to money?
That is why we have the naming rights and consideration and naming rights and recognition. Because we felt like it was absolutely imperative that we provide a means by which that a monetary contribution is not attached to the need to recognize a contribution to our community. Does that make sense? And I guess I will just say, I don't know if this is where you're going, but we intentionally put that all things will be reviewed by the board with good reason. So, I mean, we talked about the awkwardness of, and I don't think we ended up putting anything in writing, but I think it is one thing that we talked about bringing up. Whether or not we should put something in here about the fact that you wouldn't be able to name something after, let's say, a family if they had students in the school system. I don't know. Like that's where it gets tricky to me, right? Does that come with it a sense of privilege? I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is there, but that's where I feel it gets a little sticky.
Nikki, would it be fair, based on what I think Charlie was asking, that under this policy, a family or a corporation may donate for naming rights, but then the treasurer's office would have the determination of how that money is actually allocated across the district from an equity standpoint?
I apologize if I misunderstood.
While let's say a corporation may choose to name the gymnasium at a specific school, that doesn't mean that money would go to that specific school.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
That money would be donated or provided to the school district, and then, our finance department would determine how that money is distributed so that there is equity of how that happens, is the way I understood kind of that conversation.
That is exactly right. So Charlie, we were intentional in ensuring that it was very clear within here that the district would determine how those funds were spent, and so that we all know Thomas is being completely rebuilt, right? And that's not what's happening at Kilbourne. And we would ensure that the funds were spent equitably to uplift both programs, and it would not be one-sided.
Okay, that legislative history is very helpful, and I hope it will be adhered to in the future. I'm not worried about the current time, but I'm worried a bit about the future. And I think there are a number of ways to read the draft policy that, because it's, and I guess where I'm coming from is it's a battle I fought many years ago and haven't resumed, but, and that is our PTA or PTSA or PTO donations are not equitable across the district. Some PTAs give a lot more money to their school than others do, and are able to, and that has always bothered me. And I guess that was one of the concerns I hear. I still think getting this process in policy is important, but.
So I hear you loud and clear. And so if there is any particular language that you would recommend that we modify within the policy to make that intention of equitable distribution clearer, by all means, let's entertain that and talk about it holistically and align, because that is absolutely the intent.
So let me interject procedurally. Apart from this policy, there will be likely a resolution. So at a very high level, when you get donations, they must go into the general operating account. Our revised code allows the board to establish a separate fund, sort of what Trent was talking about. And that resolution presumably will go on with the second reading. And so we establish a separate capital projects fund. Any naming rights funds would go into that fund, and then the district, ultimately the board would determine the budget, how we use that fund, so that they can kind of monitor that equity. So we would not put these, assuming the board wants to go this route, we would put these in a separate fund, and then we would control that fund. That fund can exist for up to 10 years, take donations and pledges, and then use those funds however the board sees fit.
And why don't we do that with respect to PTA contributions?
That's a good question. I think those are typically more operating type annual.
Well, I mean, the PTA is a 503C and they're not donated to the school district.
We have to approve them, though.
Yeah, but they're not donating those funds. So they
Right.
raise money and then they distribute those funds how they see fit.
But we have to
this would
approve.
be, but separate from, like, this is just totally a separate thing. Somebody is giving the district said money for, say, naming rights. That goes into a fund which we determine.
And those are,
PTAs aren't giving the district money. PTAs are raising money as a separate organization and then determining how they distribute it. We're not collecting that money from them.
But we
So
saw
you
that.
as a board could determine if, I guess, I'm not recommending this, but you as a board, I guess, could say, we won't take any of these donations. But you can't control how they fundraise because they're not us.
But we still have to approve them.
But we don't approve everything.
No,
If
you
a PTA
approve
buys
all of it.
computers, we approve it.
Right.
If a PTA pays to have an author come visit,
We don't
we don't
that.
approve it.
Correct.
We don't see it. So we don't see probably
90
75%, 90% of what the PTAs are buying.
So Charlie, your question brings up one additional, I don't know, it's probably a question for you, TJ, and that, thank you for reminding us about the resolution, because we talked about that just briefly, but it's been a couple meetings ago. And that would frame how we would allocate the funds, and that would set forth the equitable distribution language. Would we have the ability, or should we note within the policy that we won't accept naming requests outside of such resolutions? And so, in other words, we go forward with both high schools, right? And we have the campaign, and we have the fundraising, and we have the contributions, and we have the naming rights, and the equitable distribution. And then we get to phase 3 of our master facilities plan, and we start working on some elementary schools. But we have a lot of elementary schools, so it's only a couple. And would naming rights in connection with those, if we were to even go that route, or let's just say someone came forward and they wanted to go that route, would that require a separate resolution, or you're shaking your head?
well, it depends on the time frame. So we're allowed to set funds once we establish this fund, it can last up to 10 years. So depending on when phase 3 would come about, we could potentially establish another fund and start the clock again and have a description, or we could put them in that fund. I
Okay.
think timing is everything on that.
But you would essentially, but those two, the resolution and the policy work hand in hand, and you need both of them essentially. And I think that's an important thing for us all to remember, absolutely. Because that's where that additional language regarding the distribution will be set forth.
Yeah, and that sort of answers Charlie's question in my mind. The PTA raises things that are operational in nature. This is a campaign to generate capital funds for long-term assets. So that's different from the annual donations when the PTA donates and they bought X instruments or what have you. In my mind, that's the distinction, if that makes sense.
I see that distinction between capital and operating, but I mean, like, we're going to vote whether to approve the $72.16 Slate Hill PTA donation to Slate Hill today. And I guess that's my, one of my many concerns is about, and we do that on a pro forma basis.
Yeah, I think our policy requires us to accept any donation, to formally accept any donation in excess of $50. naming rights would fall into that category. What the resolution would do is allow us to segregate those funds to be used toward longer-term capital needs as opposed to just put into the operating account. So I think that's the difference. We're required to accept every donation in excess of 50.
Okay, that's a concern. I mean, and it's always been a concern of mine. In fact, I think for the first few years I was on the board, I voted against every single PTA donation just to the school because, frankly, I won't mention schools, but 2 or 3 were doing a lot of the donations to the schools, and other schools weren't the other PTAs weren't doing that. My other concern, and it's provoked by the recent Columbus Dispatch article about OSU and the impact that one multimillionaire has on that university. But I guess so. At one level, my concern is, with this, and I have no suggestions. It's just, is this policy sufficient to avoid that kind of a future problem? Because my concern is all in the future, not with this current board or this current administration. I have total confidence in this current administration, this current board, but I'm concerned about future situations. If somebody gives enough money, can they have the kind of clout to actually, start ousting treasurers or superintendents or something like that? As apparently, and I have no inside information, all I know is what's in the Columbus Dispatch, but as was done at OSU in removing the president.
Yeah, obviously not something we're looking to set up an avenue for that in any way, shape, or form.
And you think there are safeguards in here?
Because haven't thought about specific safeguards related to that, Charlie. Undue influence. I think that because with every donation, there is a separate contract that guards that covers that donation. That's an opportunity to address it within that contract as well. And the policy does make it clear that what is done with the funds is within the, decided by the district, within the district's control. The only thing that I could foresee, by all means, let me know if you have any ideas, but we could put a max in order to prevent that from happening so that you didn't have one entity or one individual who was potentially going into a space where they could have undue influence merely because of the monetary amount.
Okay, these are difficult issues, and I guess, and is there any provision about anonymous gifts?
There was not anything in the policies that we reviewed related to anonymous gifts, and given that there would be a separate contract that would govern the actual naming rights and the relationship between the district and the individual, I don't see how that could absolutely be possible. It doesn't mean it couldn't be listed as anonymous in the public setting, but it would have to be acknowledged under contract with the donor.
Well, this was a problem that arose a few years ago here, was that someone gave an anonymous gift, and at least the board was not told who it was, and it turned out it was money that had been taken from somebody else, and of course that raised the problem that way, and I don't even recall what the resolution of that. I know we were asked to give the money back, but I'm not sure how it came out.
I thought that in our donation policy that it had to be from a known person, that we don't accept anonymous donations.
But after that, though, my recollection is, we haven't had one recently, was that, and I would like for it actually to be explicit in the policy if it isn't already in policy, but actually in this policy, that the superintendent and treasurer know. Well, what we did with subsequent anonymous gifts, no board member knew who it was, and obviously the public didn't know who it was. But
Jeff always knew. I always asked when it was anonymous.
Right.
He always knew.
The treasurer and I would like the treasurer and the superintendent to know as a little bit of a check. I'm not trying to get them in trouble, but at least.
Well, Charlie, they would have to, because they would have to enter into a contract with that individual. So absolutely, our district would have to know. Again, public facing, it could be anonymous if they didn't want their name associated with it. But they would have to be known, and merely because of the contractual part.
Okay, but we did get burnt. I don't know what the final result was, but I think it was a 6-figure amount that the allegations were by somebody else that had been stolen from them or embezzled or diverted in the wrong way, and we were caught in the middle of it, and I don't know what the final, it's not relevant, but I think when we're doing policy, we want to think through those kinds of issues to make sure, to do what we can to safeguard it. But we did have subsequent anonymous gifts that, at least I never knew who they were, but at every board meeting, I asked both the treasurer and the superintendent, do you know who it was, and do you?
Right.
So
It's not a convicted felon.
The termination portion of the policy would come into play. I mean, it does outline if things arise, if the board learns of,
Wrongdoings
or an affiliation of some way, that those naming rights can be terminated.
Yeah, I actually think I do think that comes into play. I actually think I would also back it up one more step, and that as it's currently drafted, Charlie, it says it is expected that a specific agreement, including length of time, nature of the naming rights, would be drawn up between the parties or their representatives, and then, such agreements to be governed by the provisions of this policy. I think I would change the word expected and to required. And so that would be based upon this conversation, in order to ensure that we would have a contract between the parties, which would take care of the knowledge of the source of the funds, at least with regards to district personnel and leadership, that I would just change that to required. If everyone would be comfortable with that.
Okay, and you've touched upon this, I didn't do an exhaustive search, but are you familiar with anyone besides Shaker Heights and Upper Arlington? Because I did some looking around the country and I couldn't find any other district that had a naming rights policy.
Kelly, you had one other one.
There was Beaver Creek. Maybe, I don't have it memorized. Dublin had something really small, not as specific and spelled out as these two, but it was really difficult to find.
I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it was really difficult to find anything that had naming rights. Usually, because they're private schools do them mostly. You don't find that many public schools that have a naming rights policy.
I guess maybe, is there a need to rush this? And do it at the next board meeting? I know that we're starting on Thomas and Worthington Kilbourne. I'm not trying to drag it out.
Randy, what are your comments in that space?
Yeah, I don't know that we have a specific timeline, but I will tell you we're planning a memorial and boardwalk from Thomas Worthington's athletic entrance to the ticket booth area through the student parking lot. Part of that, we've discussed having sponsorships, obviously separate from the memorial walkway. There's that opportunity. There's the new turf practice fields will be going in, and then obviously the other new elements of the school district that will generate a lot of excitement. So I think our booster groups are excited about the opportunity of getting ahead of that. So does it need to be done at the next meeting? No, but preferably this spring if we're to try to get something organized before people leave for summer.
Okay, as you can tell, I'm very hesitant and apprehensive, but I understand the boardwalk and the fields. And I think it's really, really important, which is why I, again, thank you all that we have a policy and a process for doing this. It's better than doing it without one. So
my question would be, what's your expectation then if you want to not delay, but, reevaluate. What is your expectation? What questions do you want answered? What information do you need further?
Well, I guess to see some other policies, but if they don't exist, they don't exist, or to think it through. I mean, it's just.
I have a draft copy of the actual agreement from our attorneys that I'll forward you.
Okay.
That might give you some.
Okay. Appreciate it. Anyone else? All right. That's the first reading of the naming rights policy. And now we have the opportunity to hear our superintendent's report. And I don't know how you can top last meeting's report. I thought it was better.
I don't either, but this could be the second best one ever.
Okay.
So, again, thank you for providing me with an opportunity to share just some of what's going on in Worthington schools, and we always wanted to start with our mission. So our mission is to empower a community of learners who will change the world, and we do really believe in that mission as we are a mission-driven organization. And so we have 4 vision statements that help us work to meet that mission. And so I've got just a few comments under each vision statement. So our first vision statements that we will engage each student with diverse learning opportunities to maximize every student's potential. And so tomorrow we're going to put some communication out, but there are many of us who struggled with math growing up, and so that was me. And as such, we don't always possess what we call a growth mindset about learning math. At the time, when we were growing up, much of our classroom instruction in math was focused on developing skills and really that following procedures. Topics sometimes were disconnected, problem solving, which we often called story problems, that required deeper complex thinking and reasoning were often limited. Maybe you had 2 of those at the end of each homework assignment. And it was hard to see oneself as successful unless you were just fast and accurate. Like those were the keys, fast and accurate. Today, the Ohio Learning Standards for Mathematics are designed to develop not only those procedural skills and fluencies, but also conceptual understanding and application. They're aligned coherently to provide the context and skill needed for new learning, and the standards provide insight into the behaviors of a mathematician through 8 standards for mathematical practice. So we in Worthington believe that every student has the ability to learn and grow mathematically, and we believe that each of our students can meet or exceed Ohio's mathematics learning standards. So in Worthington, we're really fortunate to have a dedicated group of math teachers who are committed to support the learning of mathematics. And obviously, our veteran staff member, Tom Kazmarek, who is our math teacher lead, who's based out of here at the Worthington Education Center. So Tom has been working with our principals to make sure they're equipped to lead and evaluate math instruction. In his work with our principal team, Tom's highlighted 5 important pillars necessary for effective math instruction. So we want to make sure that in math, there's deep content understanding. So all of our teachers possess that deep content understanding. Culturally responsive instruction. District curriculum alignment, making sure that there's alignment through the system, a guided workshop model for teaching math, and then constant formative instructional practice. And we believe when those 5 things happen in each of our math classrooms, we will see each of our children learn and grow in mathematics the way we want them to. So we're going to continue to talk more about that, but in that path of diverse learning opportunities, we've talked a lot about reading, and I want to highlight some of the work that's going on in mathematics. The second vision statement is that we will provide a safe environment where every student can grow intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically. Earlier this year, as a board, you know that we held these full-scale safety drills at each school with a focus on making sure we were proficient at using the communication tools that we might need in an emergency. And that was the structure of all these full-scale drills. Several weeks ago now, we had a power outage late at Granby Elementary School. We needed to close school. Principal Schlegel was able to use her cell phone in the absence of power, and thus the absence of internet or Wi-Fi or a computer. She was able to use her cell phone to email families and send a robocall message to all families to let them know that school was closed with real short notice. And this was all just by effectively utilizing the app on her phone that all of our principals have. Families were communicated with, even with no power in school, and we were able to get that communication out. And when I asked Patty, I said, hey, do you know how to do this? She said, yeah, we practiced it this fall. So that was super affirming. One of the things we want to do is provide consistent communication and promote dialogue with our community. That's our third vision statement. This year, we are holding a State of the Schools event, which we have held yearly, but it's a showcase, a snapshot of our programs and the people of which we're proud. This year's event will be virtual, and it'll consist of 5 days of online video releases during the week of March 13th. So probably our first release will actually happen during our board meeting on March 13th. So Corey, maybe we should try a live release. I hadn't thought about that. But we will follow, our goal this year is to follow the Worthington experience and options from preschool on day 1 to elementary, middle, and high school on days 2 through 4. And then on day 5, we're going to look at our district's bright future. So we're really excited about that format this year, and our thought is that by alternating the virtual and in-person events each year, we intend to keep the format fresh and our community engaged, giving them more incentive to attend in person in 2024. And then finally, it's critically important, our fourth vision statement, that we're responsible and transparent with our community's resources. So believe it or not, as we hit March in just a day here, the 2023-2024 school year is quickly approaching. Our human resource department really has already been actively recruiting and posting jobs for the upcoming school year. And this seems like a good opportunity just to provide you an update on where we stand. So there have already been recruiting efforts at universities around Central Ohio, including the Ohio State University, and several more coming here in February and March. We've screened over 300 teaching candidates at this point. And this allows us to continue to be seen as a forerunner for graduating teachers and attract those applicants during our early postings. Guys, as we're all aware, the teacher market is ever changing, and districts are actively trying to keep up with this search for teachers by adjusting their recruiting timelines. So we are hiring teachers for next year much earlier than we would have just even a few years ago. You will be seeing board approval for new teachers earlier this year than you have in the past. In fact, you've already hired 3 new team members for the upcoming 23-24 school year that were approved at our last meeting. And tonight, you'll see multiple new staff members that you'll approve tonight, again, for this 23-24 school year, as it's our goal to attract the best and the brightest to continue to come to Worthington schools. And we really appreciate the work of our team and our HR department to make that happen. So with that, those are the 4 areas that we're working on that helps us meet our mission.
Thank you very much. Any questions? That was an excellent. I'm not going to get into comparison. I never compare my students, so I'm not going to compare your reports, Mr. Superintendent. All right, now it's time for the treasurer's report.
Fortunately, I can tell you my update will not be as good as last time. I unfortunately have bad news to share, but I will share that first, followed by some good news at the end. So House Bill 1 was introduced as part of the House's priority bills last week, and it's generating significant buzz to local governments, especially school districts. And really, it would rewrite taxation in Ohio. So what it would seek to do is create a 2.75% flat income tax. So currently, taxes in Ohio progressive. Don't quote me here, I should look this up, but I think the top rate is somewhere around 5%. So this would implement a 2.75% flat tax. It would also eliminate the property tax rollback. So what that is that right now the state pays the first 10% of property owners' property tax bills for levies prior to 2013. And that was sort of a trade-off when Ohio implemented an income tax. And so this bill would eliminate that. And it would also reduce the assessment percentage on property from 35% to 31.5%. So what that means right now, if your house is worth $100,000, it's taxed or assessed at $35,000. This would reduce that to $31,500. Okay, so it's concerning to all local entities that are dependent on property tax, especially school districts. And I'll kind of explain it as a triangular trade-off with the school district on the outside looking in. So bear with me here, but theoretically, so that you understand, working residents would benefit from a lower income tax rate. But that would reduce the state budget, right? So the state's got to find a way to make that up. So they reduce and eliminate the property tax rollback that goes to schools, right? So that the state budget is made equal. However, that would put it back on the homeowner if the homeowner lost that 10%. So their trigger to that is to reduce the assessment percentage down 10% so that the homeowner is made whole. Who is not made whole is the school district. And so when I back of the napkin calculate this to be $12 million, if we were to lose that, that's roughly 5 mils. So in addition to our stated objective of where we want to be in the future, this would add another 5 mils. The Speaker of the House, in an interview, said that transitional dollars could be developed, so that is eerily similar to TPP, what we went through with tangible when the state eliminated the tangible personal property tax. They provided a transition period, but ultimately that $15 million for Worthington was put on the backs of homeowners. And so the Speaker also said that schools could go to voters for a new levy to simply replace the lost funds. So that is not good. Keep in mind, too, our new permanent improvement levy. I estimate that we would collect 4.2 million. This would reduce about 400,000 of that, so that's significant with where we want to be with PI. The one unclear question mark is House Bill 920, right? So right now we all know that Ohio has a mechanism to protect owners where if the property value goes up, the tax rate goes down. Well, what happens when you reduce the assessed percentage? The value goes down. In theory, the tax rate should go up. I don't think that's the intent of the legislature. So would 920 go out the window? Would this rewrite 920? Those are the questions that we haven't been answered. This bill sits in Ways and Means, has a first hearing tomorrow. And so perhaps we'll get some based on that hearing. But it's all very concerning. Representative Marin introduced, there's a little bit of a power struggle at the House. Representative Marin introduced the same sort of concept, but would pool, rather than take the money from property tax rollback, would pull it from the rainy day fund. That could work in the short term, but long term, that fund, runs out. So House Bill 1 is of big concern for all local governments. Fire, township levies, all those things are dependent on property taxes. So we'll be watching that bill closely. On the upside, last week we had a successful bond sale. Bond yields had an incredibly turbulent week, but Thursday just so happened to be the one calm day in the market last week, so that was good. We were able to secure buyers for all $234 million. In fact, we had orders as such that we were able to reduce the yield on those throughout the day, so we ended up in a better place at the end of the day than where we started. We originally planned for the bonds to last up to 38 years. Final maturity on this one is 2054, which is 31 years. And more importantly, in my opinion, we preserved the callability or refundability of these bonds. Typical bonds carry a standard of 10 years. You can refinance them. That was in doubt sometimes with the way the market was going, but we protected that ability. And so 90% of these things get refunded at a much lesser rate over the course of time, and so we're happy that we protected that flexibility and optionality for future boards and administration. So the transaction will close, and we will receive the funds March 30th.
Thank you very much. And we need to pay particular attention to House Bill 1, and I think consult with our legislators and inform them of the situation. But thank you. Now we're ready for, does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, we're ready for board committee reports and announcements, and I'm going to vary from tradition and call on somebody, and I have a reason. I'm going to call on Amy because I tried to shorten my presentation last meeting, which was very long, and I inadvertently left out the January 26th Facilities Committee meeting. So I'm going to, this was I'm calling on her cold here. It's another cold call. We called on Jake, a cold call here, so I'm going to do a cold call. So if you don't mind starting, Amy, and doing what I failed to do and give a report on the Facilities Committee meeting of January 26th.
Absolutely. And
Thank
I
you.
anticipated when you first started talking that that's what was happening. So Charlie and I participated in a Facilities Committee meeting on, like Charlie said, January 26th. We had a lot of items that we reviewed, so I'm just going to go through them and list what they all were because we had, I think, 12 agenda items. Some of them you'll be familiar with, but some of them, if you have questions, you can reach out to one of us afterwards if you want a little more information. So the 12 agenda items, I think it was 12, are we reviewed summer 2023 projects. We reviewed a new sign for Evening Street Elementary, the WYB office space that's used here at the WEC, some WEC work that needs to potentially be done in regards to floor settlement, Hartford Park, which I think you're all familiar with the TIF discussion, storage building spaces, grounds and maintenance, field house review, turf planning, Kilbourne planning, Thomas planning, pool discussion, phasing planning, the Thomas Worthington walking path, and safe routes to school update. So we did touch on a lot of items at that meeting. So like I said, if you have questions about a specific one of those and you want to reach out to one of us, we can give you an overview. I also wanted to share, I'm gonna have to find my notes. I wanted to share a couple of updates in regards to the city of Worthington, since I'm the liaison for the city. Their last couple of council meetings, they had a couple items that I wanted to bring just to your attention. On their February 9th meeting, they passed a resolution directing the city manager to conduct a housing assessment. I had mentioned this a couple meetings ago, that they were having that discussion, and so I just wanted to share what I had read about it, that this will be the first step in a process to understand how we can position Worthington for the future, to be a diverse and inclusive community, to ensure that all members of our community have the ability to thrive and live in our homes and community for as long as possible, and to ensure we are equipped to meet the vision of our economy being balanced and resilient, as access to housing is a key driver for economic development. So I just wanted to share that that's what's happening from the city perspective, because as I shared before, I think it's good for us to have awareness of that housing study and how those impacts may come to whatever that might bring, right, as a community. And then their February 20th meeting, which was last Monday, I just listened to that meeting yesterday, and at the end of their meeting, if you want to go back and listen to it, they had a discussion, kind of a follow-up to the Swim Inc. presentation that had happened several meetings prior. And so there was some discussion about that they're forming a working group. So the way I understood it was 3 city council members, 2 city staff members, and then I think at least 2 people from Swim Inc. are going to be participating in that working group. And I guess my question to our board and I haven't shared this with Dr. Bowers yet, but is I think that we should be at least part of that conversation. I'm not sure in what capacity. And I don't know, Dr. Bowers, if you've had any conversation with, or TJ with Robin Stewart about that. Okay. I mean, this is all very new, but my understanding is, based upon the presentation that Swim Inc. gave several weeks ago, was that they are wanting to move forward with at least the design process, because they're trying to utilize that $1 million state grant money that they have, and I think they have to use it by May of this year, is what I understood. So I don't know how we engage in that, but obviously with the pool being on school district property, I think it's important for us to be part of that conversation.
Okay, we'll reach out to Robin. They have not reached out to us.
Okay.
So we have been meeting regularly with Swim Inc. And meet again with Kirk Cameron tomorrow. So
okay,
we've had lots of good conversations with Swim Inc. on our part, but
okay. Well, I guess more to come. And that was all I had. Thank you. I did have one more thing, and I was going to ask Kelly if Kelly and I attended a student feedback session. Were you prepared to? I don't have my notes up from it.
Maybe you'll share something and then I'll share something.
Okay. Well, I may pass for a minute while I pull up my notes from that meeting because I don't have them up right now. So if somebody else wants to go.
I wanted to ask you whether or not traffic and student drop-off was at all discussed related to, I don't know where that falls into the Thomas plans, and whether or not it's connected to the work that will be phased in this summer, but whether or not that was at all discussed during the facilities meeting.
No, I don't think so.
Not so much at the last meeting. The meeting prior to that, though, it was.
Okay.
And the concern that I articulated was that I was afraid that the waiting area was too short. The way it was configured at that time was the short scope was where they drop off, and then the long one was the driving around. And if you turn that around, they're make sure everybody's off the street, no matter how long it is. But I don't know if that was possible or if they did that, but they are working hard on trying to get the traffic patterns for drop off and pickup.
Okay.
I mean, it's,
I was just
in my
curious if
opinion,
there was an
given
update there.
161, it's important that our queues not extend clear out into the street on 161.
Yeah, and it currently is on both sides,
Right.
which is my, I don't need to repeat myself. I've expressed previously, I just encourage us to look at multiple points of entry for the east and the west. And I know it is not, it is a very, very, to quote Dr. Bowers, it's a very, very complicated site. And so I don't discount that that's not an easy thing to just be like, oh, okay, we're going to add a lane here, or we're going to do this. So I just want to make sure it's still something that is being explored. That's all. And so I wondered if there was any update at the last meeting, and it sounds like there wasn't, which is completely fine.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Nikki. I don't think I have a specific update. I will say the city has not been receptive to access points from the east.
From Evening Street.
That's the east, right?
Yeah. Trying to orient
No, sure,
myself.
yeah. But I'm just saying, like, so when you say, I mean, so in those conversations that we're actively working through, that just hasn't been well received from a city standpoint.
Good to know.
And I think there's been community member concern too, from people that live in that vicinity, concerns about the way the traffic flows now out to Evening Street.
But it doesn't currently flow out to Evening Street. You mean the way
Well,
it
they're
would?
talking about the way it is now with all the traffic that just goes out that way past the McConnell. I think there's concern there both now and in the future, is what I'm saying. Like
Okay.
what Dr. Bowers was saying.
Okay.
From
So
that perspective.
issue still exists and still being, solutions still being considered. Okay. Did you find your notes?
I did find my
give you
notes.
time to.
I found my notes. So Kelly and I attended a student feedback session at Worthington Kilbourne High School last week, right? Yeah.
Right.
And so Dr. Gupta led the discussion there. And so he had 3 areas that we primarily talked about. It was love, learn, and life. And I will just say that I started jotting down notes from that student feedback session, and they just had so many things to say. So I'll highlight a couple of them. Under love, they talked about the music programs that we offer within our high schools. One student talked about the building itself and the opportunity to experience daylighting and natural views in nature, and the ravine, which I thought was interesting. I actually shared with them a little bit of the history of that site and why the school was built there. So, and then under learn, we heard some comments about opportunities for languages, priority for outdoor spaces. They talked about just rigorous coursework and opportunities for that and understanding what that looks like. And then under life, This was interesting, they talked about feeling the need for a mandatory financial course, which we now have for this year's freshmen. A lot of the kids in the room, I think, were juniors and seniors. Was that your impression mostly?
There were a lot of sophomores and seniors.
Sophomores and seniors, okay. So, yeah, and then we talked a little bit about mental health, and I'll let Kelly add in more things that I missed. So that's it for my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Anyone else?
I have a quick question and then I can go. But Amy, you said this list of 12 and I tried to write it down, but you talk faster than I can write. You know, there's that folder in our drive that is about committees. If you wouldn't mind just adding that.
Sure.
So that if people do have questions about something specific on that list, they could reach out to you or Charlie.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Thanks, putting you to work.
I know, it was a long list.
Is it okay if I go?
Sure, go ahead.
And we try to be very brief and mindful of people's time. So I do have a couple of things that I've done since our last meeting. One is go to the CLC presentation that the wonderful AAPL team puts on with our community members and our administrators. They did a special education presentation, so I won't go over that again. But Kelly Wigley also gave a presentation about social studies, and she talked about the purpose of social studies, the curriculum definition, and 6 essentials in social studies. And this item I'll put in that folder that I just mentioned. So always a great presentation. We got pizza. It was great. And then Angie talked about a profile of a graduate. No, portrait of a learner. Yes, thank you. And just kind of a preview as we're going to have ongoing conversations about that will kick off this fall. And I've actually seen some communication already go out about that. PTA council meeting was canceled that I was supposed to attend. Next year, maybe I'll be able to attend one. The last one that was scheduled that I was supposed to go to was also canceled. Tasha assures me that it's not personal, so I'm just going to take her word for it. But I do look forward to attending one of those meetings next year and hearing those perspectives. I was invited to attend Thomas's Diversity Club and speak to them about my role as a board member. So that was just really interesting to really sit down and talk to students. Neil was there, and Principal Scully was there, and Kathy Starks, who leads that group, was there. And so they had just really good, I said, ooh, gosh, you guys are asking really good questions about, why did you decide to run? How do you handle difficult situations and difficult questions? And so it was a really good conversation. I was just really impressed with that group. I also was able to attend the Black History Month program that the Thomas students put on. And, Kathy Starks facilitates that group, but there are student leaders that actually do it. And so they had poems, they had dance, they had spoken word, people sang. It was just really great. And I just thought it was a really good perspective on Black life and just an overall, good, excellent program. I can't say enough good things about it. My son was in it, so he was great. And so then not the same day. The day I went to Diversity Club, Jennifer and I went to Perry to talk to 6th grade ELA students. We went to talk about how we use our voices and encourage those students to use their voices to be agents of change. Again, great questions. They had questions that were facilitated through their ELA teachers. And so we were able to give good feedback with that and be able to utilize the slides that you guys use that we use as a district that showcase our students and why, what our mission means to them. And so that was really good. And we were able to use students that were formerly at Perry. So that was really nice. And then Amy and I went to Kilbourne this past Friday. That was my first student feedback session. And I really enjoyed how Dr. Gupta led the discussion because he talked about these different subjects of love, learn, and life, and talked about what makes you love your school and what are some things maybe that hold you back from that, and what helps you learn here and what maybe are some not boundaries, obstacles or things that get in the way of that, and what helps you prepare you for life, and what else can you want from your school. And so that was a really good feedback. I thought it was a really good balanced way to get feedback from students, and they did a lot of the talking. We didn't really have a lot to say to that, and that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Jennifer?
Way to go. It has been a really busy couple of weeks for some reason. Nikki and I were at Worthington Academy on the 16th. We had about a dozen students and just a couple quick things. First, every student talked that was in the room, so I think we really, really appreciated that they all felt comfortable enough to talk. When they were asked what could make the Academy better, nobody could think of anything. So that was good too, that they're really happy where they are. And I can't remember exactly how we got on the topic, but they put their cell phones away when they come in. They're at the Academy for half a day, and the cell phones get locked up and they don't have them. And the students love it because they're not distracted, their neighbors aren't distracted, and they were all really pleased with that. So that was a nice surprise to me on that. So that was a great visit. Following up on two of the things Kelly said, the Black History presentation by the students coordinated by Kathy Starks was just amazing. So many talented students. They did a great job. And one more thing I'll add to the Perry ELA that we were at, they're talking about using your voice to be a change agent, and the kids are going to be writing papers, and they should be sharing some of them with us. So I think we'll all get to see what kind of change the sixth graders want to make. So that'll be really fun. Last week on Thursday, Nikki and I were at the Key Communicator meeting in the afternoon, the internal Key Communicator meeting, and Rob and Neil organized that since Trent was out selling bonds. But they started out with having some note cards. So anyone in the room that felt like they wanted to thank someone or grateful for someone could write a note. So I thought that was a really nice way to get started. The teachers are coming from a long day at school, so that was a nice activity, but it triggered two things. You all in January for School Board Appreciation Month wrote us notes, and I have this nice stack of notes at home that I continue to look at. It was really a nice way to thank us. And there are times that I would like to thank people, so I think it would be great if the school board members could have some of those Worthington note cards at some point. I don't know if that's a Vicky thing to ask for those, but that would be good. One of the other things we did there was have a technology update from Jeff Collette, and I think as we think about presentations for the board, might be something that all the board members would appreciate. We also talked about Portrait of a Learner and the state of the schools being virtual. So that was a great meeting. The next set of Key Communicator meetings will be March 23rd, Thursday, March 23rd. I can go to the morning, I can't go to the afternoon because of work obligations. So the internal teacher Key Communicator meeting on March 23rd at 4 p.m. If anyone wants to go in my seat, let me know. And I would just say one more thing. We get so many emails from OSBA. A lot of times they just kind of slide by me and I maybe glance at them. And their upcoming book club, which I've never done their book club. Have you ever done it, Charlie?
Yeah.
It is being led by Jim Mahoney, who was with Battelle for Kids. And I've heard him speak at OSBA conferences and at chamber events. And he's really a dynamic, interesting speaker. So I went ahead and ordered the book and signed up, and we'll see how it goes. But one of the things they mentioned is that he is going to be doing a session at the Board Leadership Institute on our first day there. So I think a lot of us are going, so kind of keep that in mind, that I think he'll be a super good session when we go.
Yeah, in the past, those book clubs were Zoom meetings. As I understand this, they're going to
It's just
send out
kind of
written,
emails, like they're
and
gonna.
you can email.
Yeah, it's just kind of, they may send an email with a discussion question
Right.
and I didn't 100% understand exactly
Okay.
how the process is going to
Nor
work.
did
See,
I.
I thought you might know.
No, I've never done one like that. In the past, they've always been Zoom.
So, yeah.
Jim is a Worthington resident, so I'm sure he'd be
Oh, I
happy
didn't
to
know
come
that.
explain to us anytime you'd like.
Exactly how it's going to work.
That's
Okay.
awesome. I didn't know that.
That is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nikki, you have anything?
I do. Jennifer, thanks for sharing that because I do feel like sometimes I get inundated with emails and I don't always have the chance to read all the details. So
for sure.
I'll definitely grab a copy of that and participate as well. Jennifer, I think hit on everything related to key communicators. There were a few other points that I wanted to make regarding our student feedback session with Academy students. It was beyond impressive and just a really uplifting a conversation. Every student there, like Jennifer said, participated, but they also all talked about their experiences and we really did ask questions like pulling out, are there other things, but in a very positive way. They all expressed the fact that it feels like a privilege to be there, they're blessed to be there, they can work at their own pace, they don't feel the pressure of failing in that environment. So it's less stressful for them. They did talk about that the lack of phones forced them to focus. They also talked about it forces them to have conversations with each other. So that they are a very tight-knit group as a result of that, because when they have breaks, you don't just escape into a device. They talked about it having a good social environment. They raved about their teachers and how hands-on they were, or they are, and accessible, and that they really get to know them, and it shows. It was fantastic. It really was. And there was one other thing on my next page that I wanted to share. This was one thing that they shared as far as like if there was something that different that we could do at the high schools, at the traditional high schools, what would it be? And they said that the exploration/discovery days that they get at Academy are something that they feel like all students would benefit from. And those of us who have had students who go through Phoenix have seen likely the benefit of those discovery days as well. So I thought that's something that I would share holistically with the board, but excellent session. And then I will just share that I got to attend the Seussical performance at Thomas, which was absolutely fantastic and always impressive to see the amount of talent within our student body and the amount of dedication and time and hours that their instructors put into that space. It really is remarkable that I feel like we do a good job as a district of giving students the opportunity to shine in so many different ways, which is exactly the way it should be because we all do shine in different ways. We're not all cut from the same mold. So I think we should be proud of that.
Anyone else? All right, I'll try to keep mine as short as I can, but I've got to follow up on what Nikki was just saying on two things. First of all, as Jennifer may recall, the board decision to have the Worthington Academy was not, I don't believe it was even unanimous, but there was a lot of hesitancy. Obviously, I was a big fan of it from the beginning, but I think it would be a wonderful board presentation topic to hear from Worthington Academy, because I don't know what's gone on there, but I've heard good things about it. But we approved it about 7 or 8 years ago, but there hasn't been much follow-up or that I'm aware of with respect, so that would be a good. Secondly, I did not make it to the Thomas musical, but I did make it last Friday night to the Little Mermaid, and I ditto on all the things Nikki said. In fact, sitting behind me were a whole row of Worthington Kilbourne high school students, and all they talked about was how great their teachers were, how great the band director, I didn't know all the people they were talking about because it's been a while since my kids went there, but the these are people not even in it. They were just there to support their classmates and to listen to them talk about how much they love school and how great their teachers are and how great, the band director and the choir director. It was fabulous. I just wanted to turn around and give them a high five. That I was more interested in eavesdropping, to be honest with you. But it was great feedback. So I enjoyed that enormously. Ditto with respect to the Curriculum Liaison Council that Kelly spoke about. The special education presentation was fabulous. It was different than this one, but it was a great one. I really appreciated Kelly's update on the social studies curriculum. It was actually, I thought that was fabulous. And then the Battelle for Kids Portrait of a Learner we walked around, it was interactive and post notes. That was tremendous. All right, with respect, I'm going to keep my legislative liaison. Oh, I guess I'll talk. Okay, I had one other committee. Don't want to forget it, like I forgot the facilities last time. The insurance committee, since I was the only one who went to that, I'm not on the insurance committee, but the person on it and the alternate weren't able to make it because of conflicts, I think mostly related to the schools. But on February 23rd, the insurance committee met. I've never been on the insurance committee, but I spent more than 10 years as chair of the OSU Insurance Advisory Committee. So I really enjoyed it immensely. It was a lot of fun, and I knew every single acronym, and it was all acronyms. And usually around here, I have to ask people what the acronyms stand for, but it was fabulous. A lot of discussion about the transition from Medical Mutual to Anthem, and of course the WA representatives had comments about that. There was some eye-opening stuff, but basically it was going pretty well. Gallagher did a good report of the financial report and a compliance update review. So it was a very good meeting, and actually there were quite a few references to the upcoming negotiations, and I kept my mouth totally quiet. They attempted to provoke me to talk, but I didn't. I just sat there. But anyway, it was a very good meeting. Basically, it seems like the transition is going well. Obviously, you don't hear from the people who are getting more coverage. You always hear from the people who are getting different coverage, or in some situation, less coverage. I have a couple of takeaways, but I won't share them here. And then finally, with respect, I'll keep this really short. TJ did a really good job with respect to House Bill 1. Just one focus about House Bill 1. This will very drastically cut the income taxes of high-income people and substantially increase the income taxes of low-income people because most people in the state don't pay a 2.75% rate. The low-income people don't. So that's another aspect of it. I won't go through all my discussion here, but the House Republican Caucus did introduce, as TJ said, their 12 priority bills. Of the 12, 7 of them touch pretty substantially on education. So 7 out of 12 is education. I think the view of everybody who's looked at them. 5 of them would be very harmful to education in Ohio, and 2 of them I think would be not harmful. So I'll start with the not harmful. There's a bill, House Bill 9, to address the teacher shortage. I have some serious issues about some of the language there, but I think the intent is the right place to address the teacher shortage. And House Bill 10, of course, is about fully funding the Fair Schools funding plan. So obviously that would be a big plus if they were to do that. The other five is, first of all, House Bill 1, which would drastically reduce school resources. House Bill 6, again, is the bill that would, the state would get in the business of discriminating against transgender girls when it comes to sports. House Bill 8 basically would allow the micromanagement of our schools by virtually any individual parent who wanted to micromanage our schools and what's taught and so forth, and interactions. And then obviously House Bill 11, which got a lot of press, is the universal voucher bill, which would severely harm public education in this state. And then the final one is House Bill 12, which is for the purpose of gutting the State Board of Education, which I talked about the Senate version of last year, last meeting. So that's all I have right now. I guess I just, with respect to the budget, I think this pertains to there is on March the 1st at 9:30 in the morning, that's Wednesday, OASBO is having a free webinar on the Fair School Funding Plan. And if you need a link for that, I'd be glad to send it. I have registered for that. It's free. And then on March 2nd, another free one. I love free. At noon on March the 2nd, which is not the same time as the noon March one. I've got my whole calendar here but March 2nd, OSBA, OASBO, and BASA are having their biennial budget webinar at noon on Thursday. Noon on Thursday, March 2nd. The webinar, yeah. And it's free. Yeah, that'll be on the OSBA website. So that's their discussion of the biennial budget. And then on March 21st, from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon is the state legislative conference. That's something that costs, there's no early bird special, but we need to let TJ know if we want to sign up for that to get it on the next agenda. But this is an exciting, well, not exciting, a busy time about what's going on down at the State House. And I think to the extent you can, board members should be aware of what's going on. And I think we need, as I said before, need to have interactions with our state senator and our state representative. All right, unless anybody has anything else, I will at this time move to section E of our agenda, and I will at this time entertain a motion to approve items E2 and E3, that is approve the minutes and approve the treasurer's modifications with respect to appropriations, and try to do that in one motion. Do I have a motion? Got a motion?
Second.
A second from Nikki. Any discussion? Any explanation, any comments, Mr. Cusick? Okay, if not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, now section F, action, new business recommended by the treasurer. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolutions to file complaints against the valuation of real properties for tax year 2022 as indicated in enclosures F1A through F1P. And again, this is a new thing required by state law that was passed last year that requires every school district to vote on these.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the treasurer's recommendation. Any comments or questions? All right, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Superintendent, Dr. Barrs, this is the personnel consent agenda.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda. That's items G2 through G11. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent agenda means that all items listed under this consent agenda are adopted by one single motion, unless a member of the board or the superintendent requests that any such items be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately. So again, the recommendation is items G2 through G11, please.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
All right, Superintendent's new business, Dr. Bowers.
Yes, we'll take both of these together. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve item H1, which is the acceptance of the donations listed on this agenda, and item H2, which is the continued enrollment of the senior moving out of the district. Items H1 and H2, please.
So moved.
Second?
Got a motion second to approve items H1 and H2. Any questions, comments? Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, this time we are to section I, requests, questions, concerns from the board. Any concerns, questions, or requests from the board?
I just have one. Over the past week, I've gotten some questions about the high schools and safety and the hall monitors, which from what I'm hearing have been very successful in the high schools, and I think people appreciate them being there and it's going well. But I was asked, what training do we give our security hall monitors? And I'm not really sure, so maybe Randy, could you give us just a quick answer on that?
So when all of the safety monitors were hired, they went through DEI training as well as de-escalation training, similar to that our teachers go through. And then this year we've emphasized that, and we've provided the Street Smart program, which is drug recognition, and we're working on a gang recognition training with Columbus Police. So as those positions turn over, we'll repeat those trainings for our new employees. But at this point, along with confidentiality training and other things that occur at the building, we feel like they've had the full gamut.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. You think once is enough, or should they get it every year?
They go through a certification process for some of that, but yeah, we have online training that our employees complete called Public School Works. And some of those are on a rotating basis, like the Heimlich, certain other safety trainings. But the ones that we covered initially were the de-escalation and the DEI.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Okay. If anybody has any questions about any of the workshops I mentioned, please feel free to email me or contact me. And please, if you have ideas, I've gotten a number of topics for the next work session, which is on May 12th. Please, if you've got ideas, more suggestions, we'll have a very long meeting already, but please feel free. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to provide any topics you would like for us to put on the agenda for the May 12th. So you got some time to do that, but just keep that in mind. All right. Now, the calendar, I want to emphasize for us and for everyone else that the next 3 meetings are going to be at 7:30.
Next meeting's at 6:30.
Oh, wait a minute, March 13th to 6:30, I'm sorry, because we're not yet to 7:30. Okay, next one's 6:30, and we will have both 2 presentations, the English language learners one, which I'm really looking forward to, and construction update, which is really, really important. So that's on the March 13th. Then we could probably anticipate an executive session afterwards because we'll be in collective bargaining. March 27th, 7:30, and then April 10th, 7:30 as well. Of course, it depends on collective bargaining and other issues, whether we'll have executive session. So at this time, I will entertain a motion, unless somebody has any questions. Okay, entertain a motion to enter into executive session to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and for conferences with the board's attorney to discuss matters that are subject to pending or imminent court action.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to enter into executive session. It's not a debatable motion, so Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, we will move into executive session We will come out of it to adjourn, but there will be no other action of any kind, nothing voted on after the executive session. Thank you all.